So we got a new member called Christian. Is that right?
That's right, Kristen. Yes, from the
Nice
Mid-Atlantic in the U.S.
I'm obviously in the UK. I set up Canon lenses and cameras for people to learn and gather information about people. Photography, and learn about the hobby. So we've got some guests here. We've got Martin, who's a new contributor. We've got Alan, the storytelling dad, and obviously yourself. So I'll hand it to each individual person to say a little bit about themselves. So Martin, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Martin Sector. I've been shooting Canon photography since 2007, part-time. I've been getting paid for the last 3 years to do sports photography. My daughters are gymnasts, so I was attending gymnastics meets anyway and started taking pictures, and then started wanting better gear to take better pictures, and that just kind of snowballed into people paying me too. And now I've got an R3 and a holy trinity of zoom lenses and Sigma Art primes, and all paid for by other gymnastics parents. So it's worked out quite nicely. I really enjoy helping the community. I moderate the Canon subreddit and have for the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm always excited to give back and answer questions.
Okay, Alan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Barrera, also known as the Storytelling Dad on YouTube. And I've also been shooting Canon, not quite as long as everybody else, only since about 2018, when I actually got back into digital photography. Before that, I wasn't really practicing photography at all. Got into it kind of the same thing as Martin, to take pictures of my son, and it snowballed from there as well. And I am also the video producer at our church, at St. Mark United Methodist Church. You can also check them out on YouTube, as well as doing portrait photography and other things here locally.
And Christian?
Okay. I started shooting Canon when I was in high school. So that was, it's like 35 years ago, something like that. Started in a photo club after school, developing our own black and white film, and got my first digital camera, I think, when my oldest son was 11 months old, and just haven't stopped since, really. I do shoot a lot of sports because both of my boys are in baseball.
Right. Well, obviously, my name's Paul. I do a bit of wildlife photography in my free time. Do a lot of telephoto work, review camera equipment on my YouTube channel, and that's more or less what I do, really. So, obviously, we've talked about that. Has anyone looked at the information about new cameras coming out at Canon?
So the two that I've heard of on the horizon, so we obviously just had the R6 Mark II. And then the two that I've heard on the horizon are two APS-C bodies in the mirrorless family. And then there's, the persistent rumors of the R1 that started as soon as the R3 was named the R3. Those are the three that I'm aware of right now.
I heard as well from Canon rumors. I haven't actually checked in the last couple of days. I've been busy with my son, but there's been the announcement of a few, and when I say a few, I mean a few new cinema cameras that are going to be pretty well spec'd. I had specs for them, but I did not load them up, and I cannot seem to find them right now. And but in the world of video, it's definitely going to at least stack up in the competition of higher quality but relatively more affordable cost cinema cameras compared to Reds and Aries and the like that are coming out. The new Z-Cam is incredible. The Super 35 that it produces is so clean and cleans up really well. I like it, and but I think I'm going to stick with the C100 series unless I can get my hands on an Alexa or that because red's just too. It's just too much to deal with proprietary wise and things like that. I'm shooting on my 6D today with the 17-40 f4, and just to prove that it doesn't matter what you're shooting. If you're not shooting on a cinema camera, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares about your blurry background and blurry background. So yeah, slightly. I remembered, Paul, this time to disable the auto power off. So hopefully our video producer guy here won't have his camera shut off 3 times in the middle of the live stream this time. But I'm only going to be able to stay for a couple of hours because I too have, I'm not coming down with anything, but my son has an earache. So he's with Granny right now.
I will confess that I could not get the EOS webcam drivers or my copy of SparkoCam to load on this laptop, and so I'm actually shooting with the integrated webcam right now, believe it or not. So it's amazing what nice light can do.
Yeah, well, I imagine you have pretty decent light because that mic you have there sounds amazing, and I see you have sound blankets up as well. So
it's not don't be fooled by the sound blankets. That is a large backdrop reflector to hide the corners of my bedroom that are not messy.
Okay. See, I was going to do that for my kitchen, but then I was like, yeah, but then it's just a really big empty space, and I get practicals in the back. So because I live in Texas, because it's December here, and Kristen, I see you bundled up with a sweater or a blanket there. It's 85 degrees here, and that's my flycatcher right there in the background.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because it's Texas and it's still 85 degrees in December.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Phoenix, so I feel that. No, I've got a 70-inch umbrella right there with a Amaranth 60-watt pointed into it. So I find that's actually better than a camera a lot of times. If you put good light in there, like, I don't know, I'd get like 5% more image quality by switching to the R6 with the 24-70 that I've got sitting over there on a tripod not using.
Yeah.
But with it.
And that's because I was going to plug in my nice Godox light, and I instead opted for the $15 Walmart ring light.
There you go.
I need a ring light.
Ring lights are delightful. The giant light is strategically positioned so that it doesn't have a shine spot on my rapidly expanding forehead.
Okay.
I decided to angle it strategically there. Oh,
I'm
letting
sweating.
all the secrets out.
Yeah, I'm sweating. That's just no doubt way around that.
I'm in my basement. It's 39 degrees and like drizzly and gray and overcast here in Maryland. So it's not really a pretty day here. So, but I sort of moved all of my computer, whatever stuff into the basement at the beginning of the pandemic, because when at-home schooling, came about, my younger son wanted to be in the office with Dad while he was working from home. So yeah, I got shoved down here.
Well, you're quite lucky it's -2 here.
It doesn't matter whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. That's still cold.
You have castles. Paul, your country has castles. You win. I'll deal with the cold.
Yeah. The one I forgot that Paul's probably going to jump in with is the rumblings on the R5 Mark II.
Yes.
That was not. So I am almost entirely a sports guy and almost entirely a stills guy. So to be honest, the R5 kind of came onto my radar and then slipped away. I don't want to deal with the file sizes, and nothing about it intrigued me enough to stick in my brain. Honestly, a little bit of a same reaction to the R6 Mark II. To be honest, I'm not going to upgrade my R6 to a Mark II. I've got it as a backup to my R3. And when that rumor about the 24 megapixel sensor for the R6 Mark II, man, I had my wallet ready if that thing was going to be the same stack sensor. But I knew it wasn't going to be, right? I knew it wasn't going to be, but man, was I ready for it to be.
Well, Alan, your favorite YouTuber got that wrong, didn't he? The ordinary filmmaker.
Yeah.
I heard one or two people say stack sensor, and I was like, all right, what am I selling to buy this thing?
Exactly.
It is that good, by the way. If you have not played with one, if you do stills or sports, holy cow. I rented the R3 and I have not heard the mechanical shutter once, and I bought it the day I had to return it. I shoot everything in electronic shutter, 30 frames. It is that good. It's there. I don't think I could tell the difference between that and a global shutter for sports.
I mean, at 30 frames, you're basically shooting video.
You are, but I'm saying I don't.
You know.
I get straight bats. I get round balls. I get no limb deformation. I get no trace of rolling shutter like you do with the 20 frames per second on the R5 and R6. I can't use the electronic shutter, so I was going from 12 frames with the R6 to 30, like an honest 30 with the R3. I have to back it off sometimes because I don't really like coming home with my record for a weekend. The first weekend I went out with, it was a big gymnastics weekend, and I came home with 46,000 pictures. Because it doesn't make a noise. It doesn't sound. It just there's a little blinky thing, and then your hard drive's full.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And the file sizes, how are they to edit?
It's 24 megapixels. It's great.
Okay.
That's another reason the R5 doesn't excite me, and why I chuckle at the Sony A1. 20, 24. I don't care. I don't want more than that. I'm taking pictures for social media most of the time. People are putting them on their Instagram.
Yeah.
I can still crop in just fine. I don't want any more than 24 megapixels unless I can easily slash that down to something more reasonable. Because that 46,000 pictures, that was C-RAWs, because I don't see a difference. That was under a terabyte. So I was telling an A1 guy at an event, oh man, I shot almost a terabyte of pictures. And that's like 10,000 for them.
Yeah.
Their file size is huge, and they're not very well compressed.
A
lot of Sony guys have to encode their pictures before they edit them.
Yep.
Christian, you were saying something?
Oh, I was just saying that 1 terabyte, that's the whole hard drive on my computer. I have 2 external hard drives that I mirror with, but but I don't keep any photos on the actual hard drive. But I've been staying away from reading about the new cameras because I just bought the R6 about a year and a half ago, and I don't want to spend money on anything else right now.
The only reason, to be honest, for sports, the only reason to upgrade from the R6 to the R3 is if 12 frames per second isn't enough for you. If 12 frames per second is fine, I don't find a significant difference in the low light performance. I mean, shooting a test chart, you might notice a dynamic range, but practically I shoot with them interchangeably. Even in extreme low light conditions, it's just that 30 frames per second, or where I want silent and action. So if I'm shooting like from the wings of a dance performance or something, I'll make sure I grab the R3.
Yeah.
But
so
honestly,
with the R3, you say with the electronic shutter, you don't get any of the bats bending or anything like that. Whereas with the R6, you would.
Yep.
You did. Yeah.
So my daughters are high enough. My daughters are high enough level gymnasts that I could actually see their their bodies would deform. I could tell if I had shot a picture, landscape, or portrait with the electronic shutter, based on whether they were elongated or smushed. And so I did that one event, and I was like, nah, never again. But this, I took a test shot. I'll throw it in the Facebook group. I took a test shot of a ceiling fan on high, and the blades are perfectly straight comparing the two.
Wow.
Like R6 curved, R3 looks like it's off.
Have to try that with my ceiling fan just to see how it works out.
I do the same thing.
Yep.
Good plan. I think my next purchase is probably a 300 2.8.
For baseball, that's probably a really solid lens. That gets you all the way out into the infield.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your thought on that versus the dedicated 300 2.8 versus the Sigma 120 to 300? I've gone back and forth. I've rented both. I've decided I don't need either for what I shoot.
Isn't there also a 300 f4 IS?
Yeah.
Yes.
There is.
It's an older lens though.
But for that, you want to throw, you can get, I assume you're shooting with a 70 to 200 2.8 right now?
Yes.
So you can get a 300 f4 by throwing a 1.4x on it. More or less.
Oh, that's
I
true.
thought about that too, actually. Yeah. Do you have a converter?
Yeah, I've got both the 1.4
Um,
and the 2x because I
How
shoot with
much
what's that?
how much light do you lose by using the converter with it? How many
So for the
stops?
for the 1.4 you lose 1 stop, and for the 2x you lose 2 stops.
Okay, so
Uh,
that's not
totally
bad.
manageable. Paul, this is right in your wheelhouse. What do you think?
Yeah.
So that's a
Uh,
300 with a 1.4 behind it, or is that the 300 2.8?
That's 2.8. Yeah.
Yep.
My arm would fit through that element.
Yeah.
It's very sharp.
Show
Yeah.
off.
Is that is that 105 millimeters or 95 on the front element?
I've never measured it really. It's massive though. You know, it's bigger than the Sigma 600.
Bigger than that's the
That's
10.
that
It's got to be
105.
105. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's probably maybe 20% bigger than that, but it is large. But this is the
It is.
EF 2.8 Mark II with 4 stops of image stabilization. Saved up $3,000 to pay for this.
Hmm.
Now, do you notice the being it being so big and bulky? Do you notice the motors having to struggle any more to move the larger elements inside of it?
No, well, that's the thing with primes. You know, you haven't got a lot of elements to move. Zoom lenses have something ridiculous like 30 elements in 20 odd groups or something like that. And whenever you've got lots of elements, it interferes with light transmission. So quite often an older lens with fewer elements can be sharper than the modern zoom lenses.
Well, and sometimes their T rating is lower as well. The actual light transmission that's getting through them, even though the f stops are the same. You know, photographers only talking f stops, but t stops is actually how much light you're getting in.
Yeah.
I see filmographer know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We talked about this last
Yeah.
stream as well. That's why I actually didn't bring up the R5 Mark II, because I actually brought it up last time.
Got it. Kristen, what are your thoughts? Sorry, we circled around the. Have you considered the 120 to 300?
I have not considered the 120 to 300, to be honest with you. You know, I've heard about other lenses out there that are like, I want to say like 100 to 400 or some, or like 1 to 500, but I just don't know if.
So the 100 to 400 and the 1 to 500 are great if all you're going to shoot is daytime sports. If you ever have games at night, my personal opinion, f2.8 is where you want to be at if you can afford to be there. And the one that's the crazy thing about the Sigma lens, I have a lot of friends that shoot sports with it, and they really like the flexibility of it. It's for them, it's replaced their 70 to 200s.
Is it a 2.8?
It's a 2.8.
It is a 2.8. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Because I have a 70 to 300, a Canon 70 to 300.
That's like a 4 to 5.6 or something like that.
It is.
So you know what the focal range is about. For me, I think if I was gonna, I rented an older copy and it was a little bit soft, but I've heard that new copy is razor sharp from people who've used it. You know, totally usable for sports. The autofocus is great. I actually really like Sigma lenses. I do most of my work with Sigma art primes, even gymnastics and volleyball. I shoot with the 105 millimeter f1.4 just to get that little bit of extra light and background separation. Which it has the same 105 millimeter front element that 300 does. The two ways I see people going are either replacing their 70 to 200 with the 120 to 300.
Okay.
Or doing a 70 to 200 and a 400. If you're going to run dual bodies, the 300, I don't see very many people running dual bodies, 70 to 200 and a 300, because it'd be so close to the 200 for what you're trying to get. You know, you can crop in a little bit from 200.
Right. And that was my thought, was to have the two bodies, and one with a 70 to 200 and the other one with a 300.
For baseball, you're probably fine. 300 probably squarely where you need to be. If any other field sports, or if your sons are outfielders, then maybe the 400 is more money, but it is more lens. Yeah, and that seems to be the outside field sports pro kit is one body with a 70 to 200 over your neck, around your neck, and 400 on a monopod.
Okay. Good to
I don't
know.
like outdoor sports that much. Although I have 2 daughters. I just now had a son, so let's talk again in 10 years, I guess.
I don't like outdoor sports when it's cold. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that people need to remember is when you've got a lens and you take it out your warm room and you put it in your cold car and you go out in the snow, your lens is going to fog up big time, and you need to be aware of the temperature and that sort of thing affecting your lens.
Oh, you guys with your humidity.
Oh yeah,
Very humid here.
I've got all the dry air. You probably don't get shocked every time you get into your car when it's cold. But,
that's funny. That's funny.
take
All of you Northerners talking about humidity.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's funny.
You probably have to deal with lens fungus too, huh?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen a lens. I haven't seen a local lens. I haven't seen a local car with rust because we don't have snow, and I've never seen a local lens with fungus.
Wow.
Knock on wood. We did an experiment in middle school where it was leave bread out to see the growth of mold, and after 2 weeks, I had croutons.
Yeah.
It just dried.
I lived in the desert for a while in Las Vegas, and I would repeatedly because it would still get so hot in the sun in your car during the winter time. I was festive and took a little cardboard tray and put aluminum foil over it and would bake cookies in my car while I was at work, so that when I got off of work, I had freshly baked cookies on my dashboard and my entire car smelled like freshly baked cookies. It was awesome. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, I'm pairing the 300 2.8 with an R7 actually. That gets me to 480 millimeters.
How do you like the R7? So context for my question. Context. I bought one.
Yeah.
I have one. I actually went in to get on the wait list at my local camera store. This is the second time they've done this to me. They get me every time. I went in to get on the wait list for the body when it came out, and they said actually, and just like went like that.
Really?
And that's how I got my R3 and my R7 on like launch week.
I
So I hadn't really decided to buy them, but then then strike while the iron was hot. I brought it. Here's where I'm going to. I bought it with the idea that I could use it as a teleconverter for my R3, meaning it's higher resolution and APS-C. So I thought, it's either 1.4x if I consider them to be the same resolution, or it's a 2x. But the problem is I went and then I shot at ISO 4000 because I'm shooting gymnastics inside and garbage lighting. And I was not happy enough with the results that I think it was worth using the 1.4 prime versus the 70-200. So I may actually be selling mine. I'm trying to decide right now.
At 4,000?
Yeah.
For stills.
So 4,000 for stills and cropping significantly, because the whole point I'm using it is so that I can crop more. Mm-hmm. I know that is like the least fair comparison you can do of comparing.
Son of a bitch.
If you want to learn about video, I can give you a call and walk you through a couple of things if you want to.
Well, I have to put the camera on.
So 4,000, ISO 4,000 cropped in as significantly as I was hoping I was going to be able to. I had to every image I took had to get a quick wash through Topaz before I was comfortable delivering them to people, because they stood out like a sore thumb in a gallery full of R3 pictures that had been similarly cropped, which I know is not fair.
Yeah,
but that's what I was hoping to be able to do with it.
But you would expect that it should be on par with the results that you were getting out of the R3.
Well, not really. It's full frame versus IPS-C, isn't it?
Here's where I wanted it to be.
You're also talking about Canon's top of the line APS-C right now.
I mean, it's the 90D sensor. It is the top of the line APS-C. You're right. It is the best APS-C camera they've ever made. I expected it to be about 1.5 to 2 stops worse dynamic range, and I think that's probably close to what it was. Like it looked like I had about similar noise at ISO 800 on the ISO 800 on the R7 looked similar to me to ISO 3200, 4000 on the R3. So it's that much better. And if it's that much better, I'm better served personally by just using the 70 to 200 and shooting at f2.8 and raising the ISO to 10,000 rather than trying to use the 1.4. I don't know. I realize I'm an edge case, so I'm very curious how it works for somebody that actually shoots with some light. Is it a wildlife weapon? Because I've been recommending it to people, and then I'm like, I feel like I'm in a weird place where I'm recommending it to people and also putting mine up for sale after using it once.
Well, I used the 90D for a very long time, and I was more than happy with it. So it's pretty much the same sensor in it.
What ISOs are you comfortable pushing up to with it?
I won't want to go beyond 5,000 probably. That'd be my max, you know.
And is that with very minimal cropping, or are you cropping in on that ISO 5000 shot as well?
I'm a firm believer in not cropping.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that crop the hell out of their images.
Yep.
A lot of people try and get the longest telephoto lens possible. My school of thought on that is get closer if you can. There are ways of doing that. You can, you know, use camouflage and all sorts of little mini hides you can get. I don't prescribe to the idea that you need to get a massive telephoto lens to get a good image. You just need patience. That's all it takes, a bit of patience.
Kirsten, you're muted if you're talking to us, but I assume you're not based on the meeting.
I'm talking to my little guy who came down to interrupt.
All good.
As usual.
Martin, I think that when you're talking about the ISO performance between the R3 and the R7, you also have to remember the stack sensor.
Absolutely.
Because you're dealing with one that that's literally crutched to the other. Yep. And I think that's definitely the game changer between the two. You know, besides it being full frame and crop, you know, it's enough of a sensor that can hold its own against, you know, non-BSI, you know. So
the way my kind of rule of thumb is you get about a stop and a third to a stop and a half pretty much across the board just from going full frame APS-C, just that comparison. And it seems like you get about another half stop, maybe a stop, probably not more than a stop from going front side illuminated to back side illuminated. So we're probably looking at in the order of 2 1/4 stops between them.
Yeah.
Because there is a little bit of a difference between the R6 and the R3, but not, I mean, if I'm not pixel peeping on them, I'm not going to notice.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, with that Sigma 105 f1.4, that is the only lens, and this is true on both the R6 and the R3. I can pixel peep 100%. Like I could take a 100% crop, you know, talk about cropping. I could take a 100% crop. So like a 1280 by 760 chunk and put it on Instagram and nobody would question it at ISO 3200. That is the pixel peepers lens of choice. The 40 millimeter 1.4 and the 105 millimeter 1.4 are insane pieces of glass. I think I've put some stuff on Facebook about that.
I think we're blessed with such great image quality from these lenses that I don't think the image quality comes into it anymore with primes versus zooms. I think where it comes into its own is the aperture. Large aperture, more light, gives you better, less ISO required. And essentially, I think that's where we're going with lenses now, because Sigma's really stepped the bar high. Where I think in many cases the Sigma lenses are actually sharper. You know, I had the 100 to 400 Mark II EF lens. I've put that up against the RF 100 to 500. I can barely tell a difference, if I'm honest with you. And when I had the Sigma Contemporary, again, I couldn't tell much of a difference. If I put them up side by side, you would struggle to pixel peep and find the difference. I do test charts as well. And I'm working on a video at the moment comparing the 100 to 400 EF versus the 100 to 500. And I was looking at the test chart images last night, and I can't tell the difference, if I'm honest with you. They're so close, you can't tell the difference. Despite what people are saying an RF lens is closer to your sensor, so it's going to be sharper than the EF lens. Well, I don't see that. you know. So I think in lenses in general have got dramatically better. Yeah, going back in the day when I was at college, I was using the Sigma glass. It wasn't as good as a Canon lens. You always got chromatic aberration in there, you know, and you always had to deal with that. And I was doing it manually in the light in the dark room, you know. But now, I don't think you can honestly tell the difference in these lenses unless you start pixel peeping at 200 or 300%.
Well, I think two things have happened that has made, Sigma art lenses really exciting for me, especially the adapted EF ones, because that's all we've got right now, which is a whole nother topic I don't really care that much about. But we can talk about it if we need to. The adapted EF third-party lenses with mirrorless, where there's no opportunity to have any focus misalignment for sports action, blew the doors off the opportunities. Like I would never consider, like I shot for years with a 7D Mark II and a 6D Mark II, which I know the 6D Mark II is for sports, but I couldn't afford a 5D and I couldn't afford, definitely could not afford a 1D. I tried some Sigma lenses and I couldn't get autofocus consistency. Mm-hmm. I would put them on the thing and, it just wasn't where it needed to be for the demands I was putting on them. I shoot now almost exclusively. I'm talking 98% of my shots are with Sigma art primes, always wide open f1.4. And I do not miss focus. Like I don't think I've missed, and it's not me. It's the camera, the lens, the setup, the configuration. It's magic at this point. You get the eyes sharp. If you're far enough away that you're shooting full body shots, you get the whole body sharp. Your depth of field is 24 inches, 36 inches or something at the distances I'm shooting with the Sigma 105, which is plenty for a gymnast. But the fact that it can drive a third-party prime through an adapter as quickly and rapidly and accurately as it can, and true of both the R6 and the R3, is a real testament to where camera technology has come, that we can make those kind of choices. I upgraded from the Sigma 70-200 to the Canon one while I was shooting on DSLRs and saw an improvement in focus accuracy. I think I could take that Sigma 70-200 and put it on my R6 and not even be able to tell the difference anymore, just because of how good that mirrorless technology has gotten.
Right. Because there has been a known issue with the 150-600 Sigma lenses on mirrorless at the moment. But that's more down to the RF technology that they're not having access to. I've seen so many YouTubers go on about the pulsing that goes off, where it's doing that at shorter distances. Long distances, not so much. So until that's rectified, many people don't want to get the 150-600 lenses on the mirrorless systems. The same is true as the Tamron. The Tamron is doing the same, the G2. So from what I'm hearing, there's rumblings that Sigma are in talks with Canon. And hopefully, if they were to bring out those lenses on RF, sort out the pulsing issue, a lot of people would be a lot happier then. But short distance, shorter focal length lenses seems to be unaffected. So your 70-200, your 24-70s, your 50 mils, your 1.4s, they seem to be unaffected, to be honest with you.
And I had the 150-600. I sold it because I have this weird cycle that I go through where I don't need a longer than 200 millimeter lens for the indoor sports that I shoot. But every once in a while, I'll see a good deal on one, and it's about an annual cycle, to be honest. The cycle is, hey, it would be neat if I could take pictures of birds. And then I bought a 100-400 and sold it. I bought the 600 F11 and sold it. I bought the 150-600 and sold it. And but the cycle goes, hey, it would be neat to take pictures of birds. I buy a long telephoto. I take pictures of birds. Actually, taking pictures of birds is hard, and I don't like it very much. And then I sell it. And I was like, nobody thanks me for taking pictures of their birds. Whereas if I'm taking pictures of athletes, I get all the positive dopamine karma from grateful parents. Birds are not very grateful subjects. So, but when I did have this 150-600, I tried to get it to do the pulsing that people were commenting on because I happen to have it and the R7 simultaneously. And I don't know if it's a very specific set of circumstances, but I took some pictures of birds with it and didn't notice any pulsing. I tried to follow, because this was right after the R7 had launched and everybody was freaking out about it. I tried to follow some YouTuber who had said like, oh, if you do this and you do this, but I didn't see anything.
I think where it happens is if you're in eye tracking and you've got lots of foliage, that's quite tall, and you're photographing through the foliage to get the bird or whatever, the eye tracking wanders off, and that's where the pulsing is going on. Like you said, it's a specific circumstance, but until that little thing was rectified, I actually sold my Sigma 150 to 600 last week. It's the third one I've owned. I bought it originally when it came out, as well as the sport version and the Tamron. I did a comparison video until all the YouTubers in the world decided to copy me, and put me to the bottom of the list, But essentially, it is a sharp lens. There's no doubt about that. But until it comes out on the RF mount perfect how I want it to be, that's why I've decided to go the RF 100 to 500, even though it's like 3 times the price. It's a very expensive lens for what it is, because I know Alan's was thinking about the 100 to 400 EF.
Anybody had experiences with the 100 to 400 RF? That price point is almost enough to send me back into my bird loop again.
Well, Gordon Lang has done a review of that versus the EF version, and obviously you're giving up an aperture on that.
Sure.
As well as it's not quite as sharp. A lot of people say the older lens isn't going to be as sharp as the RF, but it's not true really, because based on what Gordon Lang has actually put out, it suggests that the older 100 to 400, don't forget, it's weather sealed. The RF version is not weather sealed, which is a big deal,
I look at it as, I don't look at it just based on price point and where it's positioned. I haven't been thinking about it as a sequel to the 100 or 400 Ls.
Yeah.
I've been looking at it as, okay, Canon is repositioning their entry level to be full frame RF with the RP. And I've been looking at it as, what are the focal lengths of the 55 to 250 STM that everybody really loves? Well, if you work that out with the 1.6 crop factor, it's pretty close to 100 to 400. And in that comparison, I think it stacks up well as a full frame 55 to 250 alternative. And I've recommended it to people on that basis quite a bit.
Yeah, it's certainly a good option, but I don't know. What annoys me is what Canon's done with the pricing on the 100 to 400 EF lens. If you buy it new, it's pretty much costing you £2,500 now. Now, when it originally came out, it was £1,850, 2,000, then 2,279, 2,450, and then 2,500. It's gone up, 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 up. I spent $1,300 on mine because I got it grey import from Australia. So I saved a fair wad getting that grey import, And
this is the Mark II, I'm guessing, at those prices?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's silly what Canon's doing. It's like, why would you buy the EF version then if it for an extra, £400, get the RF at $290, $900?
Because the RF doesn't fit on your 5D Mark IV.
Well, there's that. But then there's the incentive, like Christian's done, to get the R6. I did the exact same thing. Got that last year. Obviously, the Mark II come out. The only incentive for me with the Mark II is with the RF 800 that you can see in the back there. The focus box in the R6 is really small. What Canon has done is made that tiny box a lot bigger for focusing wildlife. I actually approached a few YouTubers who did a video on this, and I said to them, "Did you by any chance leave your camera in crop mode by accident?"
Because you saw the box bigger.
Yeah, because that's what happens if you go in crop mode. Your tiny
away.
box becomes massive.
Yep.
So I got some snacky comment from Brent Hall saying, "No, I didn't leave it in crop mode." You know. So that's another reason why some people might be tempted to get the R5 Mark II, because obviously that's a benefit. For me, though, is something I've been looking for as an alternative to that camera is the EOS R Mark II, or the R8 as some people seem to think it'll be.
Yeah.
But this is the confusing information that's out there. The R8 and R9 are supposed to be APS-C cameras. Now, the EOS R is a full frame camera. And if the EOS R Mark II comes out, it must be a full frame camera. So how can the R8 be the actual successor that some people think if it's APS-C? It doesn't make sense.
I mean, for video,
yeah.
For 4K video work, it might be, because the R only has 4K crop, 1.6 video. So if you're strictly a 4K video person, then an R8 could be a sequel. I'm stretching the definition quite a bit, but
yeah, and remember that what we think of as the successors to our favorite DSLRs, that Canon has chose to strangely name, the R series, and still withholding the R1, even though the R3 is clearly the flagship type camera that they've been used to releasing, even though it's not their flagship. The R3 is not Canon's flagship right now. Remember that.
No.
They're waiting for the R1, but their naming and releasing has been pretty off compared to what was common practice for them for a long time. And I think if maybe it's a cost to production standpoint that they don't have enough of the full frame parts to do that are ready to go, and they can make it out of APS-C parts. I don't know. It could be something like that. It could be logistics. It could be manufacturing or tooling or processing, any other number of things. But I think that if the successor to the R and the RP end up being the R8 or R9, I think that it would be still comparable to sort of what Canon did with the Rebel line. That would be like the R7, the R10, and then maybe the R8 and 9 could be more like the 90D, the 80D series, which it's a more higher tier camera, offers more weather sealing, more features, higher frames per second, higher resolution, the flip outs, and now everything has a flip out screen now. Mm-hmm. But before, it didn't used to always be that way. So maybe they'll take it up to make a little bit higher grade APS-C, and who knows, we might still get a full frame equivalent out of something that, and maybe something completely new. Who knows?
You touched on something interesting that I heard kicked around a lot, that I wanted to pick out. The R7 not being a true successor to the 7D Mark II. It's not really merely a 7D Mark III. I've heard that sentiment a lot online. And that was one of the things because there are some things I was disappointed. I was disappointed that there is no battery grip and no allowances for one. The door is not removable and there are no pins in the thing. Somebody is going to make one that doesn't involve the battery door but there is no Canon based battery. They're not planning for a battery grip. So that was disappointing. Mm-hmm. I was honestly disappointed with their new ergonomics. I did not like having to relearn where the aperture wheel is. I missed it every single time. It's no longer around the set button. Yeah. It's up around the autofocus. Yeah. Like just give me my 3 dials. I just wanted an an APS-C R6, R5. Like I love that body. I wish they'd have just come out with the APS-C sensor in it. But one of the things that I heard people kick around a lot, and feel free to jump in, Paul, because I know you've got the R7. One of the things I heard people kick around a lot is the buffer depth.
Yeah.
And I think people are misremembering the buffer depth on the 70 Mark II, because in my head-to-head testing, I was getting the same buffer depth. I had no problems. That is not a complaint I had about it. I can get 55 raw shots snapped off. I can get a bunch of JPEG snapped off. And if I'm using a fast card, I don't shoot hammer down for 50 shots in a row, right? I shoot 10, I shoot 5, I shoot 5 more. I shoot, little bursts of action. And in practice, where I'm going like burst, and also in actual use in sporting, gymnastics is a pretty target rich environment. There's a lot of stuff happening. You're trying to catch every leap and flip, and I've never hit the buffer. I've never hit the buffer limit on an R7. What's your experience been with that, Paul?
Well, I've only just got it, so I've not spent a lot of time on it. But going back to what you said, there's too many people out there who rely on spray and pray. That's not what a photographer is. A photographer's job is to be selective and get the images you want, rather than have millions and millions of images to go through. It's like a lot of people talk about use RAW. I use a lot of JPEG, actually, because, yeah, you can do a lot with RAW. I'm not saying you can't. And for certain scenarios, you need it, like weddings, portraiture, that sort of thing. Yeah, you need that quality. But if you get your exposure right, and you know what your exposure is, and you know the image you've got is what you wanted, there's no need to use RAW a lot of the time. Because JPEG is more than adequate in most scenarios. And sometimes it's beneficial if you go on social media and upload your images, it's quicker, because a lot of sites won't read raw images anyway. Saying that, my iMac does read raw images, but strangely enough, so modern computers are sort of reading raw images. But like an older PC I've got a Windows 7 PC here, it can't read raw images natively, so it's a bit of a hassle having to get software and use that, like Photoshop or Lightroom. But yeah, as long as you're selective, I don't think the buffer is a problem.
Justin, I know you've got to pop off for a second in a bit. Any thoughts? What body are you shooting baseball with right now? The R6?
The R6, yeah.
Do you have any experience with DSLRs moving to the R6? Any lessons learned, surprises?
I had the T7i before I had the R6, and to be honest with you, it was kind of a spur of the moment purchase because there was something wrong with the T7i, and so I brought it in, and I was like, well, I don't have another camera body, so and she said, and at that point the R6 had just come out, and she said, well, you either need the R6 or this, and I said, well, give me the R6, I'll buy the R6. And they said, well, we don't have the body, just the body, we have the kit. And I said, okay, well, I'll take the kit. And then they said, well, you need the adapter ring for your EF lenses. And I was, okay. And they said, well, you're spending a lot of money. Do you want the third party one? I said, no. Get in one. Well, we only have the $200 one with the,
with the ring that you don't need.
The ring that you absolutely do not need. No. And then, it was I said, okay, I'm going to need some more batteries. Okay, well, I know you're spending a lot of money. Do you want I'm assuming you want the third party batteries. And I said, no, I don't want the third party batteries.
So you walked out of there for about $4,500 then?
Yeah, it was about $4,500. It's all right. I texted my husband. I said, hey, I'm going to spend some of my inheritance today. If you don't want prematurely spend some of my inheritance, if you don't mind.
It's going to look like there's a fraud charge on our Amex right now. But
right. But really, it's just me. Yeah.
I had the same phone call to my wife when I quasi impulse bought my R3. I was like, hey, so if Amex calls you, because this is going to be an out of the ordinary purchasing behavior, just let them know it's me. And she said, oh, don't worry. Camera store, Martin Sector, never heard of him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, to be honest with you,
$7,000 camera store? No.
I've had it for a year and a half, and I really am actually like just getting to know the dials on it, because I really just kind of jumped in and started using it without really looking at it and going through the manual. So I bought I don't think I have it down here, but I bought a book. I think it's by David Bosch. Does he sound familiar? Yeah, but
well, I've got on my Instagram, Martin Sector Photography is my Instagram. I just posted a reel within a few weeks ago because I've been having people bug me. How do you configure your R6 autofocus for sports? And I posted a real detail. I'll post it on our Facebook group also. I spammed it out about 2 weeks ago. I don't remember if I put it on the Canon cameras and lenses one, but I made a flow chart, like a 13-step flow chart, and a video on how to, with my experience, configure the R6 for sports so that the back button focus turns into a magic lock onto the face wand.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
The number one thing that it took me months to figure out, because I didn't look at the internet, apparently everybody on the internet already knew this, was turn the initial point for face tracking off of auto to center point, and it turns it into a whole new camera. If you haven't found that one setting yet, without that set, so there's it's buried deep in the menu system in that autofocus menus. Okay. For face tracking, there's one setting called initial point for face tracking.
Okay.
And it defaults to auto, which is garbage.
Okay.
Auto, it makes it feel like you're trying to outsmart the camera. If you've ever had the experience of like it's locked onto the wrong thing and it's like picked up something in the background and you have to like do this little dance to try to like get whatever it's locked onto shaken out of the frame and then go back onto it. No more dance. You can say start tracking from center point, and then what happens is if you have your focus off, so if I have the AF on button activated, if you're off the button, you have a center focus point just like you would on your DSLR. Put it on the person you want to lock onto and hit the AF on button, and it will grab their face and hold on to it anywhere they go in the frame.
Okay.
If it does lose tracking for anything, just pop your thumb off the button. It snaps back to the center, put it back over them, hit it again. It turns it into, I wish I had a less coarse analogy for it, but it feels like the difference between missiles and guns from a dogfight, where for DSLRs, you gotta point it at the thing, where this is like you laser designate, like hit that person, and it just does it automatically. It's hard to I actually took a video through my camera to show the difference. That's what the reel is. It's interestingly enough, I partially only made that reel on the R6 because I couldn't get my R3 configured that way. It was pissing me off. Excuse me. I was very frustrated. And so I knew if I showed everyone this R6 video, I was like, how do I make the R3 do this, please? And somebody jumped in on the Facebook group right away and was like, oh yeah, you go to this setting and flip it. And now my R3 behaves like the R6. So yay, Facebook groups.
Yes, I did see somebody else post about, setting up the R6 for sports.
That was probably me. Oh no, Zumani. Yeah.
Feelings.
Yep.
Zumani. Yeah.
Yep. Let me see if I can find it. I'll throw it on the Facebook group after we log off of this chat. So you can grab it there too.
I will. Thank you.
I want to talk about batteries briefly because I did put a post up about batteries. I'm a big believer in getting the Canon genuine ones because they're going to be good quality ones. Even used ones are going to be good quality. But I've had a lot of experience with the third-party ones failing or a message coming up on some of the cameras I've had in the past saying, take battery out, this is a non-genuine Canon one, and some people are saying, I've never had that ever. But there's a big difference in third-party batteries. And I think there's something else that not everyone is aware of, that there are many fake batteries out there as well from China manufacturers.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little story, actually. Someone wanted a power brick for their Game Boy. Some child did. That electrocuted the child and killed the child.
Oh, no.
This is how bad it's got in China, where they're literally getting some electronics and, you know, just putting on some legitimate logo from the EU, for example, saying it passed all the safety tests when it didn't.
CE
So,
mark.
So going back to the batteries that I get, a lot of the third-party ones I get that I've tried in the past don't last very long. You know, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Canon ones are perfect. I've got a few that have stopped working, you know, that have come directly from China. So I recently did not recently, but a couple of years ago, I did a video about a Canon battery grip. I don't know if any of you guys have actually seen that video, where I bought one from eBay. It said it was legitimate. It had a legitimate box. Well, it had all the branding that you thought it would be legitimate, and it didn't feel right. So I bought the real thing from Amazon and compared both of them side by side. One was $80, one was £190, you know, $190 as you would call it. And there was 100 grams weight difference in them, even though they were supposed to be identical. So there are a lot of fake stuff out there that come from China. That's why I'm always dubious whenever I buy something from China, whether it's legitimate or whether it's attempt to be fake, a counterfeit, you know, to make it look like the genuine thing. And the Chinese are well known for reverse engineering, as you probably know, with Viltrox trying to get involved in the RF lenses themselves, and they got shut down by Canon. So whenever you do purchase something from China, you need to be wary of what you're actually buying.
I needed a lot of power for my R6 before I upgraded to the R3, which I'm using aftermarket batteries on the R3 quite successfully because the stock ones are $400.
Yeah.
But I do actually notice about a 50% longer use time on the one that came with it than the BM Master 2-pack I got for $40. Everything, the R6, the R7, the R3, and I assume the R5 behave really, really well if you're powering them with a power delivery brick rated at 30 watts or higher over USB-C. You can stay, if you've got genuine LPE 6NH batteries, and you've got a power delivery power brick or the official Canon, whatever, who's what's it, your batteries will not decrease. You'll stay at whatever battery power you were at, and you stay in that H plus 12 frames per second mechanical shutter mode until your power brick runs out. And I bought like a 10,000 milliamp hour power brick for something like $40 or something. I bought a little small rig cable clamp and a 90-degree USB connector, so there's no chance of bumping the cord and messing with the connector. And I go to events now with the R6 fully charged, and I come home with them with it fully charged. Like I use no battery power except from that power brick that I bring with me, and I could buy another one of those for $40. So I'm done now that I have a set of the LP6NHs. I have no desire to buy any more of them because there's so much more efficient ways to buy power these days. I know that's a little bit controversial because of people are like, oh, what are you plugging into this? You could fry your camera over the USB-C. I'm curious people's thoughts or reactions on that because I feel more comfortable knowing that I feel more comfortable knowing that I'm not putting a third-party battery up into my camera and having it interface directly when it's expecting a genuine product. Power delivery is a very mature power standard. They handshake and it's over it goes through a filtering mechanism in the camera. I make money with my cameras and I have no problems connecting them to a whatever power brick. Any thoughts from anybody else on that? Is that something you guys have looked into?
Not really.
Not me, no.
I tend to buy used original Canon battery chargers and batteries. And I don't have any problems with that. Whenever you see some advertisers new, you've got to be wary.
Yeah, I would only buy batteries. And this is, I don't know if I'm foolish or not, but I've only bought batteries at brick and mortar stores. Like I will go to the local camera store, and that is the only place I will buy batteries. When they have it in stock, I'll buy one. I don't want to buy them on eBay. God forbid. I want to buy them on Amazon. I will buy them at a brick and mortar store where they will hand them to me, and if it's bunk, I can hand it right back.
Right.
What about SD cards?
I will buy SD cards on Amazon. Loves me some Lexar. The 1666 V60s are they seem to be the sweet spot for me. The R6 doesn't need anything else. I was a little bit grumpy that the R3 had a compact flash, the CF Express Type B slot, so I couldn't just keep using two. Like I probably have a dozen of them at this point. They're great. I buy them all in the 128 gig, so I don't have too many files built up on any particular card. Like if you wait for a sale, they're like $20 a piece or something, $30 maybe. They're fast enough. Like, I can almost buffer out my camera. Like you don't, they're even faster than for stills. They're faster than you even need, but it's nice then when you're copying over to your computer to have them be just as fast to get off of it. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Paul?
Well, there's a lot of fake ones on eBay. I've had a lot of experience with counterfeit cards. But what the Chinese like to do is they like to rewrite their cards and then relabel them as a legitimate one. All mine are like SanDisk Extreme ones, 170 megabits per second. But I have had some counterfeit ones as well that were supposed to be genuine, that were in genuine packaging, looked legitimate. I did a video a couple of years ago on this where I contacted SanDisk direct, spoke to their customer service agent. We had a long conversation about counterfeit and legitimate. In the end, I got my money back off eBay, but you will find counterfeit ones on Amazon as well. So the best thing to do, and any advice I can give you, is double check the serial number matches and then contact SanDisk directly, because you can message them via email or chat and just ask them to double check your SD card is legitimate. Because the last thing you want to do is risk your valuable images that you've spent, however long you've spent on it, plus the money for your card. Because as I've said in the previous chat we did, I lost some valuable images of my niece, that I'll never get back. And that was a Lexar card. I went to Lexar and sent the card to them actually and said, can you do anything with this? And when it arrived, I looked at it and said, this is counterfeit. There's nothing we can do. And we're really sorry, but that's it. We can't do anything for you.
Yeah, I love my Lexar cards, and I've heard about counterfeit ones being out there as well. I have to hop off, but Martin, I am going to look you up on your Instagram at Martin Sector Photography and on YouTube, The Storytelling Dad.
Perfect.
Right?
Yep.
Looking forward to it. All right.
Nice.
Take care.
Glad to have you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I've heard about counterfeit Lexar cards. I feel like, so if I'm a card counterfeiter, I'm not counterfeiting 128 gig UHS 2 V60 cards, right? I'm counterfeiting 512 gig cards. I'm counterfeiting terabyte cards. I'm counterfeiting the V90s because they cost me the same to make. So I don't know, maybe it's a false sense of security, but I've never had any issues with the cards that I've got. But I feel like I'm not in this. I'm terrified of counterfeit compact flash express cards, especially if I'm going to spend real money on one.
I think they're harder to counterfeit, to be honest with you.
The CFEs that you can buy a little kit. You can buy a kit to make your own, where you put NVE, the little short M2 form factor NVEs in a case. So there's a kit floating around out there for about $40, I think, that you can put a cheap, like SATA hard drive into PCIe 4 hard drive, knowing that is out there and that technology, because it's the same communication protocol as a hard drive. So knowing that that's out there makes me terrified to spend $600 on a card or $700 on a big compact flash express card and then have it poop out on me. I have one Compact Flash Express card, and I hate that I only have one, but I can't. I like having it as a backup. I get home, I verify the pictures coming off of the Lexar SD card, get them copied onto my network storage so that they're two places, get them imported into Lightroom, and then clear my Compact Flash Express. I wish I had more. I just can't bring myself to have a whole set of CFEs the way that I do for my SDs.
Because what the Chinese were known for doing is taking an 8 gigabyte SD card, remapping it, so the computer thinks it, for example, is a 32 gigabyte card. And what's happening is once it gets to the 8 gigs limit, your images are flying up into the middle of nowhere, vanishing into thin air. And your computer thinks it's a 32 gigabyte card when it's not. And I got caught out with that until I found some third-party software on the internet to do a bit of a scan on these, cards.
My favorite thing in that similar vein was I saw a teardown one time of an external hard drive, like a counterfeit Western Digital or something, where it just had lead fishing weights in it when you open the housing, and there was a 4 gigabyte USB thumb drive that had been gutted and soldered to the port. Wow. So it was the right weight, it was the right size, it was the right plastic. There's nothing in it, just enough to. But if you plug it into a computer, it would have said 4 terabytes or whatever. So you tried to put that 9th gig onto it.
Yeah. Have you ever used the adapters
for?
Well, it's like you might have a micro SD card and you put it in the full.
Yes, but I don't like to. I don't know why, other than it's another point of failure. So I don't do it for any real work. But I do carry, anytime I'm using, I've got a GoPro, I've got an Insta360. Anytime I'm carrying those, I do have some SanDisk Extreme, high rate micro SD cards, and I do carry adapters for them, so that in a pinch, if I did run out of storage, or Murphy's Law stole my SD binder and that's all I had left, I could use them, but it makes me uncomfortable to shoot on them when I care about the images and I'm getting paid. It's just one more point of failure that I don't want. How about yourself?
Well, I use just the Extreme SD cards solely. I have used adapters and I have used micro SD cards. The problem I experienced was I got corrupted images when I used those adapters. I spoke to Canon directly about it and I said, is there an issue here? And they recommended only use full-size cards. That's what we recommend. Now, there has been people on the various Facebook groups saying, well, I use it and I don't have issues. If you're taking one image at a time, a couple of images at a time, you're probably not going to notice it. But if you're putting through hundreds of images a second through your camera, you will get corrupted images guaranteed from these adapters. And that's why I don't use them. I got burnt once and I thought it's not worth risking.
Yep. I learned a similar issue trying to do video with them, trying to do an adapted micro SD card into the SD card. And it gave me all kinds of artifacts, and my video was corrupted in most places. And it didn't record anything more than like the first minute, 45 seconds of it.
Sounds like it just couldn't keep up with the bit rate.
Yeah. I think the bit rate and the write speed, it just wasn't. And plus I was using a third party adapter card that wasn't even it was a SanDisk micro SD card, but I wasn't even using it, so it was just horrible. And so I won't use anything other than the native card that it's supposed to use. Even for example, like I have a 5D Mark II that I still use, and it has no Wi-Fi capability, except there's those very cheap
i-Fi.
And I literally did my research to either buy a 5D Mark III or the 6D, and I ended up with the 6D because it already has Wi-Fi as well, and it has a little bit better capabilities than the Mark III did at the price point that I was looking for, because I eventually ended up getting my my C100, and so it also uses strictly SD cards, UHS-2s. So I make sure that at least, and I pointed this out in the group as well this week, that at least you're using the native card that it's supposed to go into, whichever card slot that you're used to on your camera, and not do something that's adapted, even if it's just a little adapter that may be form factor easier for you in the long run. Like Martin was saying, it's just going to be a headache if you just end up losing all of that. And recording straight to SSDs is probably the most optimum way to do it, especially for redundancy. If you can record from your memory cards as well as the SSDs, because our life is redundant. Redundancy is redundant, and it's a good thing to have. But there's like me, I just back it up from my computer into separate files on my hard drive, my external hard drive. But I also keep certain memory cards backed up with those files as well. So it just depends on how redundant you want to be, how careful you want to be. But the bottom line is, try not to adapt when there's a native possibility to do so. That's that's what your camera was meant to do.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, I totally agree. I think even though the micro SD to SD adapter is just my understanding of it is there's nothing to it. It's like the EF to RF adapter, right? It's just gold traces to make the form factor bigger and spread the pins out.
Yeah.
But that's still a gold trace. That's one more contact that could be dirty and intermittent. It's one more opportunity for there to be slight loss. And again, with your issue, it's not even that issue maybe wasn't even the adapter. It was just that the cards are built to a different spec because the manufacturers aren't expecting you to be jamming it into a C100 and spitting, C-log onto it or whatever. So, the quality control is different if you're buying a card meant for use in a high performance camera than something that's meant to get stuck in a GoPro 8 and thrown underwater. While we're talking about adapters, interesting thing, Kristen was talking about, first party versus third party EF to RF adapters. Terrell, I see your question on the backup options. Let me talk about adapters for a second and we'll see what everybody's backup strategies are. I've really started enjoying. So I've got the basic Canon adapter because I don't need the control ring on my R6 or my R3 because I've got 3 body dials. I don't know what I would put on a 4th body dial. So if I had the RP and the R and on the R7, I miss having the 3rd dial for my, ISO, aperture, shutter speed. But any body that has 3, I don't need the control ring dial. However, I really have enjoyed having the drop-in filter adapter. I did not buy the Canon one because it's $1 billion. It's like $300. I don't know, $278 or something. It's gone up and down in price, and it's always been too much. And it doesn't come with a clear filter. I'm going to mispronounce it because I don't know. Is it Mike? M-I-E-K-E? Mikey? I was wrong 3 times. I love that thing. I've got that adapter.
I've got one of their battery grips, and it's the one that's held up.
Oh, the build quality on that Mikey adapter is better than the build quality on the basic Canon adapter that I've got. It's got better weather sealing and less slop. Like head to head, I have a genuine Canon adapter, and it has, maybe 2 degrees of click when the lens is mounted, and there's less on the Mikey. For the same price as the Canon drop-in filter adapter, and they take the same drop-in filters, by the way. Like it's 1-for-1 interchangeable. You can put the Canon filters in the Mikey and vice versa. For the same price as getting just the Canon adapter with the one, I think it comes with a variable ND and no clear. which by the way, you can't use it without a clear because the back focus distances will be affected. It's slightly longer than a basic adapter, and so you need to put a clear in so that the geometry is right, so you can fix your focus geometry. So you cannot use it with just a port cover. That's true of both Canon and Mikey. It comes with the clear, so it's like $150 or something, like $150, something like that, for the VND with the clear. And then for the same price, I went ahead and bought a CPL and 2 Pro Mist filters. They have a 1/4 and an 1/8 that are all drop in. Because I shoot so much with the Sigma 105, which has a 105 millimeter filter diameter.
Yeah.
I'm not buying $400. I'm not buying a $400 Pro Mist filter and a $600 ND
like
for this thing.
Trying to put a plate on top of a giant PVC tube.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But being able to have one, yeah, exactly like that. Yeah. Now all of my EF lenses have drop in, and it's the exact convenience of having it right back there when you need to tweak the CPL or adjust the ND slightly. I can do it with my thumb as I'm holding the lens. And people are talking about, that's part of the reason why I'm not that fired up about Sigma not having RF lenses yet, because I don't want to lose my drop-in filters. Like I love shooting with drop-in filters. That is a feature, not a bug to me. I'm happy with the image quality. I'm happy with the price. They make lenses that I want, and I can use my drop-in filter adapter. I've slowly been shifting my EF lenses over to RF. So like I bought for convenience, I bought the RF 24-105 instead of the EF, because if I'm using a 24-105 f4, I want it for convenience, and it's not as convenient to put the adapter on it. I eventually will buy the RF 70-200 because I shoot so much with my primes. Weirdly, that the aspect that the 70-200 that's attractive to me is the compact size, because it's mostly in my backpack. So I don't care about the image quality difference. I rented both of them. Yeah, it's better, but not by an amount that I care about.
Not comparing it to the primes.
Not comparing it to the primes, not comparing it to the price. When I got my R6, I rented the RF 70-200 and I rented the EF 70-200, all 2.8s, the EF 70-200 Mark III. Shot gymnastics events with them, and then went out and bought an EF 70-200 Mark II for like $1,000 or something used, because they're the same lens minus bluer grayer paint and a one anti-flare coating on the front. And interestingly, that it was early enough in the R6 being out that it wasn't common knowledge. I think I don't think I had the answer for sure when I bought the lens. Canon had only said that the Mark III was compatible with their 12 frames per second mechanical shutter mode, but they are the same lens. The Mark II version works just fine with the 12 frames per second mechanical shutter mode too.
Okay.
Anyway, that was a tirade. But if anybody has RF mount stuff and EF mount lenses, man, that Mikey adapter is a steal, and it is a really high build quality. Now the Viltrox and the Comlight adapters,
I've seen that. Garbage.
I hate them. I bought one and it fell apart. I bought a Comlight that fell apart that I kept because I don't know what I was going to do with it. It was my only adapter for a while. And then the Viltrox was so sloppy. I had bought the control ring adapter because it was like $99. I returned it. It felt like junk compared to the Canon one. Like the Canon one feels like it's an extension of the body. So does the Mikey. The Viltrox one felt like a toy that I had glued my camera to, and I just did not feel like I wanted to have that in between my $6,000 R3 and my $1,400 Sigma 105. That just did not inspire confidence. Maybe it was fine, but not the same, not at all in the same build. If the Mikeys and the Canons came out of the same factory, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think they do, but like the build quality is there. They're great.
It's good.
What about Speed Booster? Have you ever used that?
I have. I used the Viltrox Speed Booster when I had M50 Mark II. Or no, Mark 1, whatever it is. Basically the same thing. I liked it. If I was keeping the R7, I would think about getting another speed booster for it. I'd probably go with maybe Metabones or something. I don't know. How about you?
I've never used it, but I've looked into thinking about the 7.1 Canon one. Apparently, there's one available.
Yeah, there is. I get jumpy about it. So if I don't need it for slow stuff. I would only need it to work for action, right? Because I have an R3, and I would be using, if I had the speed booster, then I could use my R7 as a mini R3, right? It would be a good backup for that. It'd be, the similar focal lengths and 30 frames per second electronic, although rolling shutter. And Canon has not come out and said that they're going to support that 0.71 speed booster on the RFS line. They have not. They do not officially support it. Now I know it works.
Yeah.
Now, but Canon has removed functionality and firmware updates before. My R6 is still on the original firmware. I have not updated my R6 firmware because in one of the first two updates, and I am not a Canon conspiracy theorist, by the way. I understand most of the decisions that they do and why they do and why they make sense. But one of them that annoys me is that I can't update my R6 because they locked out the option to shoot third-party lens. This is going to sound very niche, but I promise it's not as niche as it sounds. Sigma has a great lens for APS-C, the 18 to 35 f1.8. Very famous lens, very high quality, very sharp, nice wide aperture. It is an overbuilt lens, like a lot of Sigma art lenses are, and it actually covers the full frame image circle. Like the image circle is large enough that it covers at the 35 perfectly. And you get some minor vignetting when you're zoomed out to about 20, maybe 24. And below that, then you get like a hard vignette around it. R6 original firmware, you had the option of selecting whether you wanted to shoot your third-party APS-C lenses in full frame mode and deal with the image circle, or it would or shoot them in 1.6 crop mode. EFS lenses, you always had to shoot in crop mode. They updated the firmware on the Canon to require, there is no way on an updated R6 to shoot in full frame mode with a Sigma Art APS-C lens, even though it's totally usable for half of its focal range, which I found very irritating. So that's why it makes me nervous about if Canon was to come out and make a statement saying we are supporting the 0.71 on the R7 and the R10 for aftermarket lenses, because that's specifically for cinema lenses, right? That was the original purpose. Is the C100 Super 35? I can't remember.
It is.
So do you have thoughts on speed boosters? Do you have a speed booster?
I don't.
Okay.
And I was about to get one, and then I ended up just getting a super fast lens because that's my thing. Is I would rather have as little in the way of trying to get around something compared to actually getting a better product. I'm not saying it's like not good enough for me, but in my terms, like what I've seen them used for mostly is people just trying to get an extra step of light, or trying to do things, basically trying to make something work that doesn't work on a system that isn't meant to work together. And that's usually involved with like cine lenses or antique lenses, things like that. But for me, no, I just I stick to try to using native as much as possible. I do have one adapter, the K&F concept, for my FD lenses, but that's about it. Plus, I don't really do any telephoto at all. My longest lens is I have a 70-200, but the f4, and I hardly use it. I took it out the other night when I went to our local drag strip, so I could also be like Dan and photograph fast horses.
That's all, man. Not bad, eh?
It was fun.
I suppose we should do a shout out for Dan Schubert because he's he's not.
Hi, Dan. I hope you feel better.
For me, I use this lens. The what is it again? I forget sometimes. 16 to 35. The only reason I carry this is to put on the R7 because it's APS-C and it can't go wide enough. So that 24 is like 38 mil, something like that I've got, 24 to 105. So I have to put this on, and this gets me to approximately 25. So I've got some parity then. So I've got a 25 to 105 that I use on my R6. But if I want to get a similar field of view, I have to slap that on instead because it's too telephoto. And that's a thing a lot of people forget when you have APS-C. To get the same sort of parity that you've got with full frame, you need to buy a wider lens. Sometimes there isn't a wider lens available, like the RFS. There's nothing available really that I see. So you have to go a bit tad wider and get something else that will fit, even though it's carrying some extra around,
I'm sure you're totally right. I've seen a lot of people online complain about the lens selection on the RFS not being up to what it is on the EFS. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like my thoughts on my day job is a mechanical engineer, so I understand the realities of product manufacturing and portfolio management, and you can't come out with everything all at once. You just can't, because you got to be earning the money to come out with the next thing to make the next thing. And so your strategy is kind of either lenses first with no bodies or bodies first with no lenses. And they took the lenses first with no bodies strategy on the R and got roasted for it. What I mean by that is, if you remember, what were the launch lenses for the RF line? It was the 28 to 70 f2.
Yeah, that was a
and then the EOS R. Like, this lens does not match this camera. And then it made sense when the R5 and the R6 came out, and like, oh, okay, now like this goes together and makes sense. And like, this lens can be used to its full capabilities on this, because it also didn't have image stabilization, right? So it's like, what are you giving me this big unstabilized beast lens and this body with no IBIS? And then once the IBIS bodies were out, now it has 8 stops, and it totally makes sense. They've gone the other. Sorry, go on.
But then they've got that argument that you can always adapt their massive EF range. That's their argument. So that's why they've gone the body way.
Exactly.
And then bring out the RF later,
So that's totally the strategy they took on the RFS is, let me give you 2 different bodies at 2 different price points. We've got a billion cheap EF and EFS lenses that you can adapt. So there is no ultra wide right now, but you can buy a 10 to 18 or a 10 to 20 and for $200, $300, throw it on and it's great.
Yeah, cheap.
Cheap. And the only thing that's not as convenient. Now I'm excited that they'll come out with a native. I hope they come out with a native version of the 22 millimeter f2. That's the lens I miss most from EFM. I think it was tiny. It was like the size of a lens cap.
I think that's coming out. I think I saw something on Canon Rumors.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Didn't they just do a 24 f1.8 IS?
On it.
That was a RF lens though, right? Not an RFS lens. So the RF, the AP, they made an APS-C lens. I mean, it's literally.
I thought it was an RFS.
It was literally like the EFM lens was literally like this size. It didn't stick out any farther than the grip on a M50. That was a great lens too.
Reminds me of the old 40 pancake.
Yeah. So, that's it was the pancake, there's the 24 pancake EFS, there's the 40 pancake EF. There hasn't been a pancake RF lens, although there's some arguments that maybe the 16. And then they don't really have one for RFS yet.
We have the silver dollars with that VR.
The googly eyes.
The 5.2 mil. Is that what it is?
5 point something.
Yeah.
On the last stream, we talked about the RFS 18 to 150 being a repurposed M lens.
Totally is.
And our argument, I can't remember, was it David last time mentioned the electronics makes it a new lens in effect?
Well, what was the pros and cons of it being a repurposed lens? I don't care. It doesn't bother me any. Like, it's a great lens.
There's nothing to say it in, but when they bring out a new lens and then they've just copied elements from another, mount, it's not like we've come out with a brand new sharper lens. It's just, let's get that and put it on that.
Well, we were talking about that, but then you also have to think of it like a car dealership. If you bring in a brand new car that needs a brand new engine, sure, they have a brand new engine that's sitting around, brand new off the factory, but are they going to give you the first brand new engine? No, they're going to give you one that's been sitting over here so they can get rid of it first. It's the same thing. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the newest thing, but I think what we were talking about was the argument that I think the price point, because obviously the EFM, the M mount is dead. They've discontinued it all. So it made more business sense for them to repurpose it into something that they could already make that sells for their new product than to just let all of those raw materials die.
Has anybody done a teardown on that? Has anybody seen, did iFixit or anybody do, or lens rentals? I would be very curious to see like how much parts reuse there actually is between the two. Did they just slap a new mount on?
I haven't seen one for that one.
I think Gordon Lang reviewed the M before, and he's reviewed the RF like this time. And he says,
I know the performance is very similar.
Yeah, that's what he was saying basically.
Well, I know when I know lens rentals, I think it was when the RF big primes came out, did a teardown on them to say that, they just super glued an adapter on them. Like they're the same lens.
In the last stream, I talked about the very expensive telephoto lenses, the F4s and 5.6s that cost nearly 20 grand, in many of the instances. And the school of thought is the 600 F4 looks pretty much the same as an EF 600 F4, except with a silver thing on the end of it.
Yep. 400 as well. 400 F2.8 looks like they super glued an adapter onto it.
Yeah.
And I think a teardown backed that up. Like I didn't think there was anything different in the guts or the optical formula. I could be talking out of school. I'm not in the market for bird lenses. I try to stay out of it. So but yeah,
it's like an extra £6 though. Because you could get the RF F4, or you could get a second-hand used one for £5 off eBay or Amazon or whatever for about 5k, and you have to weigh up your options. Do you want the RF version? That's double the price. Well, more than the double, or get the older one used.
RF lenses that don't bring something new to the table don't excite me very much. And what I mean by that is like, if the aperture is wider, or the zoom range is wider, or it's a combination of herbs and spices that I can't get in an EF lens and adapt it, I'm excited about it. Or if it's significantly different. If I was going to buy an 85 1.2, they really revolutionized the 85 1.2 is a whole different beast in the RF versus the EF. The EF is essentially still the same. Oh yeah. The EF 85 1.2, even the Mark II version, is essentially the same lens as they came out with in the 70s on the FD. Same. They updated the autofocus motor, but not the optical formula. And the RF is a whole nother animal. That is an amazing lens. It's got a smoking fast autofocus. It's razor sharp edge to edge. It is an awesome piece of kit. Now,
about the 50 1.2.
50 is not a lens I care about too much. I know people say they did a similar update on it. I do not think it is. I think it's a better update. So I don't get close enough to sports to care about a 50. So I'm a sports shooter. Now, that said, I have the Sigma 40 now. And the Sigma 40 blows most 50s out of the water because it's one of their 3 overbuilt crazy lenses. But the 85 is great. I rented the 85 1.2 and I rented the Sigma 105 1.4 at about the same time. I kept the 105. I did not keep the 85. And a lot of that, if they were the same price, I might have thought about it longer. But keeping the Sigma was like $1,100 on top of the rental, and keeping the 85 1.2 was like $2,400 on top of the rental. And I did not see that much difference between them. I know it's a weird back and forth comparison, but the background separation is similar because of the difference in focal lengths. The image quality is the same for all effective purposes. The one area where the 105 loses significantly is that it weighs more than my 70-200 f2.8.
Did you notice any difference in the 30% stop from 1.4 to 1.2?
Yeah. I was able to run my ISO a little bit lower, but both of those are such a huge boost over the 2.8 lenses I'm coming from that as long as I can keep it under, the thing people don't get about going from a 2.8 to a 1.4, if you're shooting at ISO 3200 on a 1.4, that's 12,800 at 2.8. If you're shooting the same exposure with the same light and shutter speed, it's insane the difference that a couple of stops makes.
Oh yeah.
And for me, that's the difference between usable images.
I shoot the f4. You think I don't know?
I get frustrated with 2.8s when I have to grab one now. It's just so much better. But
this is one of my best lenses.
And it is very blurry.
So no.
17 to 40.
Yep, f4.
Oh, I got into the. I've got the 14. Oh, I'm gonna hate in the comments on this one. I've got the 14 to 35 f4 RF lens because I couldn't sleep because I have a baby, and I got an alert on Facebook that Amazon had a pricing glitch, and I managed to get in and get one of those $160 14 to 35 f4s.
Oh.
I was as I'm hitting buy and submit, there ain't no way the lens is coming from this. I'm gonna get a "we're sorry" note. Sure enough, 3 days later.
I'll tell you a funny story once about Amazon. I bought a book of stamps, a book of 12 stamps, and in the delivery, I got 120 books of stamps. I sold it for 100 quid.
Oh, I believe it.
It's like, I never asked for it back. This is like,
I don't know if it was Amazon's glitch or the purchasing department's glitch at my day job, but we had to buy some glycerin in 1 gallon jugs for a test we were setting up, and I needed 6 of them, but 6 cases arrived, so I ended up with 72 of them instead of 6. So I had glycerin coming out my ears forever.
Someone mentioned something about what you guys do for storage.
So buy a lot of it. That is what I do. I do not have a good. So my local solution is, I've switched since I've started getting paid. So I have a day job, but I do paid photography. For me to be able to do both, my delivery of pictures has to be as easy and seamless and quick as possible for me to be able to continue to do it. So I've invested a lot of money, reinvested a lot of the profits from my, I guess the revenue at that point, if I'm reinvesting them, from my sports photography into my computer. So right now I have a pretty built computer. I have a dedicated drive for my Lightroom library. I have 4 drives in it. I have a dedicated, very fast drive for my Lightroom library. I have a dedicated drive that I ingest my SD cards directly onto. So when I put an SD card in, it copies onto just an import drive, whole own, like fastest SanDisk 9800 black drive that you can buy. And then I have a 4 gigabyte internal drive that, as I'm finished with stuff, or excuse me, that's 4 terabyte. Oh, okay. I have a 2 terabyte ingest drive, 1 terabyte library drive where I also keep my program folders and my library. and then a 4 terabyte mechanical drive that when I'm done with stuff, I copy them over to that. And then a 32 terabyte network attached storage that 4 terabyte drive slow, like first in, first out, gets backed up to and then deleted off of. And that works really well for me. I don't have for the program, I don't do a lot of video. So I don't have a screaming fast processor. I've got a 12th gen i5, like 12,600K, 30. Can't remember now if it's 32. I can't remember if it's 32 or 64 gigs of RAM, one of those two. And then once crypto crashed, I bought a 3090 Ti graphics card. So I got a screaming fast graphics card, which does nothing for photography. Doesn't matter at all. It's great for video editing, and great for making AI images with stable diffusion. But that's my backup scheme. I do, and then one addition. So I go to a fast SSD, copied to my network attached storage while I'm editing. Once things are edited, the edited folders go to a Google Drive. I don't back up like my non-keepers to anywhere on the cloud because I don't care. Like I don't feel the burning desire because I shoot sports. I shoot at 30 frames per second. Now you were commenting on spray and pray. I don't spray and pray, but I use frames per second to be more accurate. So I'm catching specific, precise moments in a gymnastics routine where they're at the apex and the peak. And I'm not perfect. I could do my daughters, but if I'm shooting somebody else, I want to get a half-second bracket around the moment that I'm trying to capture. So I'm trying to not one-shot it. So that results, a half second is 15 pictures. So I got burp, burp, burp. So I've got, built into the way that I shoot pictures, I'm throwing away 85% of them, even if every burst has a keeper in it. So I don't care about the other ones because I'm not doing video or anything. So I don't back up anything other than the ones that I edit, and the ones that I edit get backed up to the cloud. Well, I do throw everything onto the drive because I do that as a safeguard for being able to deliver. So everything on my NAS that's just everything. That's everything I've shot. I have yet to shoot 32 terabytes of images. Once I have to deal with that, I think I'm probably just going to throw money in it and buy more drives rather than try to figure out what's on there. I have heard of Backblaze. I've heard of a couple like good backed up online options. I have not explored any of them because so far Google Drive for the edited photos, and then has worked for me.
With me, I've got my 2 iMacs here. That's my old one. Unfortunately, I had to get a new one here, which I wasn't happy about, but because the operating system wouldn't install the new Final Cut Pro, which I use for video editing. And I've got one of these, RAID boxes, you can put various drives in. So I've got like 4 2 terabyte hard drives in there, and I basically dump everything on there and leave it there. I should do more maintenance. And the recent thing we were talking about, Alan, you talked about Photoshop. I sort of bit the bullet and went for the subscription service because I was using CS6. Didn't want to do it. I've avoided doing it for 2 years because I thought it's like. The funny thing I have noticed though, you can buy Photoshop for $20 or pounds a month, or you can get Lightroom and Photoshop for $10 a month.
Yeah, there's a photography bundle that comes out cheaper, and you get classic, Lightroom, Photoshop, and all the mobile apps. Plus, it'll all sync to the cloud, which some people care, some people don't. But here's a tip that I did because this is actually the second Adobe account. Adobe, don't listen to this. This is actually the second Adobe account that I've cheated them out of. But after your month, because you'll get your free month first. After your free month, go to the website. Okay, don't go on a tablet or on your phone. Go to the website and try to cancel your subscription. And once you try to cancel your subscription, they will offer you a better price 50% off every time.
Nice.
Yes. That is how I now, because now I get all the apps. And I actually upgraded mine last week because remember we talked about I was paying almost $90 a month for the all apps plan because I use so much of it, which I didn't have a problem with. 80. Oh, 80. Okay, yeah. And I actually put in because I'm now enrolled in an online film school. Put in my discount, and I get it for like $25 now.
Nice.
$30 for the all apps plan. So if I understand Final Cut, I'm tempted to try Final Cut just because everything that else is coming out is free. But I mean,
I've used.
I like Premiere. I like Premiere.
I just well, to be honest, it looks like a rip-off version of Final Cut Pro. The Pro version does.
Yeah.
I've used them all. I've used Avid Express. I've used Final Cut Pro since the day one it came out, and I have used Adobe Pro as well. Out of all of them, Final Cut Pro for me is the ultimate, and you just pay a one-off price.
Yeah,
it's £250 pounds now at the moment, but that's it. It's not a subscription service.
Yeah,
they may go that way in the future. I don't know. But funny enough, what you've just said regarding the Adobe package, I actually get Adobe Premiere Rush in that package.
Yes. Yep. And
that's for all your Instagram reels.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, if you were ever in a pinch and somebody ever asks you to make some kind of a video for them or a slideshow or anything like that, an Instagram reel or a YouTube short or anything like that, it also gives you the option to use the Premiere Rush or Photoshop or Lightroom camera app as part of your phone.
Nice.
And it will directly import straight into said program. And it gives you a lot more leeway and direct access to all of the settings and features of your native camera through using those apps. And I've made Instagram reels and shorts straight out of without even closing Premiere Rush. And I've actually sent files from my computer to my phone to edit because I couldn't get the assets to load from Premiere. Yeah, because everybody who uses Premiere knows you love it, but you hate it.
Yeah, nobody loves Premiere. People are just like it's an abusive relationship that it's got too much sunk cost in leaving.
It is.
It's familiar.
They should send me a ring that I feel guilty for wearing.
Yeah. Have you looked into, so now that I have a beefy graphics card, all the YouTubers that I follow have within the last probably 18 months shifted to Resolve.
Yeah.
Get a free version and it does all the rendering on the GPU and it handles any codec you can throw at it with a couple of Sony exceptions, and I think it doesn't like the RG codec or something. What's your thoughts on that? Because I'm like, I don't have any video projects right now, and the problem is if I have a video project, I need to get it out the door, and Premiere is the way to get it out the door. So like, I don't know what big multi-track editing project I'm going to do that has no time limit on it to like figure out how to use Resolve.
Well, the thing is that Resolve has much better color grading than Premiere does, and it's so much easier. And it's even some of the masking options in Premiere get really complex and complicated really quickly. And that's so annoying, especially when you need to either put a mask over a specific object, specific person, or mask over the entire clip or the entire sequence. It just depends. Whereas I know that using DaVinci, everything's node based. So yeah, you can literally just grab exactly what you need to do exactly that.
Right.
And so I watched another video this morning about the history of Blackmagic and their evolution of DaVinci. And I may have to give it a shot because
it's free.
It's
the
free.
The free
It's
version
free.
is like everything except for a little bit of
Yeah.
what is it? I can't, multicam, I think is the only thing. Don't quote me on that. But there's like one pro
Yeah.
feature that I didn't care about. And then if you did want the pro version, it was
It's a one-time fee.
200 something one-time fee. Get it forever.
Yeah. I mean, I've already paid that to Adobe this year, plus some.
Exactly.
So yeah, I could definitely see the appeal in that.
Have you looked into it, Paul? Or I don't know if Resolve is Mac or not.
It's both.
I think it's multi.
Yeah.
The only thing for me is the learning curve. Really, it's not the software or the price. It's the amount of time I'd have to spend learning the thing. And that's why I use Final Cut. I've used it since it came out, and I've always used it. And it's like I can do anything I want on it, rather than get I've used Adobe Premiere, and it is very similar. It looks very similar. Few things are done slightly different. It always seemed to me that because I do remember the days of Premiere 5.5, in the early days of Premiere Pro, and it looked a lot different to how it looks now. And it seems to me they've liked what Final Cut Pro looks like. We'll go and copy what they've made and just make it. Because if you look at them side by side, you think they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many ways you can skin a multi-track editor, I suppose. And non-linear, I don't remember what they're called.
Well, Avid was very different, where you had to go into a certain mode and cut your two pieces of video, then bring it into the timeline, and then muck about with it. And that was considered the industry standard for film and television production, because I did a television production course on it at college on it. And the way most of the more recent ones are, you just pull the whole thing into your timeline and you cut it in the timeline to whatever you want. And it's more fluid for me to do it that way than go back to the Avid Express professional way of doing it, which was bring the cutted amount of video in how you wanted it and then bring it separate into the actual timeline. It seemed more complicated, more time involved doing that than say the modern day stuff that you get in Resolve, Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, where you just literally put the whole thing in your timeline, cut it up, and that's done.
Terrell says in the comments that on the Mac system, you have to get the paid version to use the GPU rendering on the Intel Macs at least. So that may be okay. Yeah, I remember Gerald Undone, who I wish I cared more about video, because man, he does some great videos. Like everything I know about cinema, I've learned from his channel. I even bought his purple HDMI cables. Damn it!
I'm looking at mine.
I've got mine right over there. Love his everything, but man, when he that's when Resolve came on my radar. What was that, about 18 months ago, when he switched from Premiere to Resolve to talk about how
that was
how much it affected his workflow in terms of like just instant rendering on his 3080 or something. So I didn't have a GPU until 2 months ago because all the crypto miners were hoarding them. And now I've got one. But again, still haven't had the project. I don't know how I'm gonna cross over. I need to just make like a fun project to learn it. Because again, the only time I'm doing video, it's on a deadline, and that's not the time to learn a new software package. Or maybe it is. I don't know. YOLO.
I've got a few questions that I pulled off the Facebook group, so I thought I'd just read them out.
Sure.
James Bankhead says, I'm for photographing small weddings using manual settings, weddings indoors, country club. What sort of lens should I use?
Ooh, that's a scary question. So, the reason I say it's a scary question is not because the answer is complicated, but
it's a lot of variables.
Well, there's a lot of variables, but
24 to 1 to 5, solve it all.
Typically, there's two strategies wedding photographers take. You either do a pair of primes, So, a 35 and an 85 or a 50 and an 85,
Mm.
or a pair of zooms. So like a 24 to 70 f2.8 and a 70 to 200 f2.8, or some mix and match combination of that. Wide prime, telephoto zoom, wide zoom, telephoto prime. That is what I would do for lens recommendations. Now that is all assuming full frame.
Yeah.
Don't bring a 70 to 200 and a crop sensor to a wedding. You can bring a crop sensor to a wedding. That's fine. I think my photographer, my wedding photographer, I think shot micro four thirds. Like, it doesn't matter. But the lack of clarity around, I feel, I don't know. I would feel uncomfortable shooting a wedding. I'm not a wedding photographer. I've got an R3 and I've got a wet R3 and a Holy Trinity and a bunch of 1.4 primes. But because I'm not a wedding photographer, it's not that I hate it. It's that I'd be so nervous about it.
Yeah.
It feels like opening a restaurant and asking what kind of pans to buy.
It's one of the reasons I never did it in the film days was if you mess it up, you're in a lot of trouble.
So that's what I'd say about weddings is if you're going to shoot a wedding, whatever lenses you bring a backup. Whatever body you bring a backup, and both of those backups better have dual cards. Yeah, because there's no takesies backsies.
Yeah,
if you're doing a wedding for pay. Now, if you're shooting, I don't know, you're shooting your friend because they don't have any money and you're at a cabin and whatever. But if I shoot sports and I'm getting paid, I can have any part of my gear can fail. Any body, lens, battery, or card can fail, and it doesn't affect my ability to deliver the irreplaceable pictures that I am getting prepaid to take. Now, if I was getting paid after the fact and nobody had already given me money, if I was doing the thing where I'm throwing a gallery up and people are buying the pictures they like, that's different. That's a different risk level. But I don't ever want to have a conversation with a paid, contracted parent excited about the pictures that they paid me for their state championship, volleyball, gymnast, whatever, and be like, actually, my aperture was glitching out, so I didn't get anything. Here's your money back. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to betray their confidence, and that would not be good. This is a small community of gymnasts and photographers. I would only get to do that once before my business ceased to exist.
Some of it came up. I don't know if any of you guys have been watching the World Cup football.
Okay, I have not, but I'm familiar with some of the buzz around it.
And some of that has been pointed out that is quite weird. All the photographers on the sideline have not been using their lens hoods.
Somebody commented on that.
Jared Poland talked about that this week as well.
Frono's commented on that when he did. Yeah, Frono's pointed out that in a photography scrum, the hoods block the viewing angles. So if you're standing right next to somebody with a 400, and you've
the lens hood is this big,
and you got
it's half of somebody's head
hanging off.
Yeah,
you're more likely to impinge into their shots.
Or tight spaces as well. You may not have room to use your lens hood when a lot of times you're shooting right up against barriers or something like that. And if you're already shooting right up against it, you're not gonna. It's gonna impede anyway. And a lot of times, even when I use my 70 to 200, I find myself because I keep the lens hood on it backwards, like everybody does. But I find myself instead of using it, taking it off because at least on my F4, I shoot it with it handheld, and it feels more cumbersome then because I like the F4 because it's lighter. That's why. Because it doesn't weigh as much as my head. And my camera already weighs enough. And oddly enough, I'm going to pull it up right now. Oddly enough, it's on my camera right now. I know, right? Well, this is my C100.
Yeah. You're compact already.
Well, it's because this lens was on it and this was on the camera. So I switched them out, put this one on the camera. And then, actually, when my camera went out last time, I put the 35 1.4 on.
You got about 1 minute, by the way, if you want to blip your shutter button or whatever you got to do.
No, actually, it was my monitor died.
I was looking at the 29:59 countdown timer.
Yeah.
But there is something that I always thought, you've not got your lens hood on your lens, protecting your lens, and the football comes flying at your lens and hits the front element.
Oh, I took a picture.
And smashes the front element.
I use my lens hoods indoors 100% of the time on all of my lenses, and I do it for lens protection. I also, so I don't use UV filters, except on my 105 to 1.4, because that thing's huge and it came with a Sigma one. So I'm like, all right, if the Sigma made a UV filter for it, I'll put it on there for protection. But in general, I don't put protective filters on my lenses because I don't believe, if I'm shooting, okay, let me caveat this. I know this is about as controversial as RAW versus JPEG, right?
Yeah.
UV filters are, I will use UV filters if I'm going to be in an environment with abrasives or liquids. So if I'm on a beach or I'm in the desert with blowing sand, or I'm going to be shooting with paint flinging around, or worried about mud getting stuff on my lens that I'm going to have to wipe off, I will put a protective filter on for those situations. But I do not believe that a UV filter provides any sort of impact protection or general protection from brushing and contact. And, you know, if a football comes winging at your lens and a UV filter's on there, if anything, it's going to break the UV filter, and then the shards of UV filter are going to scratch your front element.
Yeah.
So no, thank you. Hood, I actually, again, mechanical engineering background, done a lot of drop testing. Mechanical engineering current ground, I don't know what that is, but I've done a lot of drop testing and product testing, and a filter, I can't imagine a mechanism where it absorbs enough energy to have an impact on protecting your lens. A hood, it can flex, and pop off, it can flex and break, it can prevent direct contact if it does like tumble onto asphalt or whatever. A hood is a much better protection for your lens and front element combined than a UV filter ever could dream to be. I also have a very bad habit of I act like my gear is disposable, which is unfortunate. I've never broken anything seriously. I've never had any. I hate pedal lens hoods, because if I'm not shooting with a camera, I set it on the lens hood.
Yeah.
So, you know, the 105 is like, you know, it's like setting it on a dinner plate. It's not going to fall over. The 7200 is a little bit sketchier. I actually bought a bigger filter for my 40 millimeter 1.4 so that it flares out a little more. Yeah, hoods, yes. Filters, no. Unless I'm getting in people's way.
And you know, you mentioned one thing is that's one of the things I disliked the most about the lens hood for the 3514 is the tulip hood on it, where it didn't have a complete round cone that I was used to on the 50. And
Yeah, the 40, the Sigma 40 is even worse because it's rounded pedals, so it doesn't even have flat pedals. I mean, that 6035 might have the rounded pedals too, but at least the 70-200 has flat pedals, so you can still kind of. That's probably a real bad habit. I'm going to have a camera fall over one day and regret admitting to doing that. But
don't worry, it won't matter. There was a shot in another group that I had seen somebody take a vertical picture of their Christmas tree, and then it was a long exposure with the aperture stopped down and zoomed in on it so that you got the light trails, but zoomed in on your Christmas tree. It looked really cool. It looked like lights popping out. And I tried to recreate it at my brother's, and probably a little too much Dos Equis.
Just enough.
And just enough. And ended up zooming in, getting the great shot, and then all of a sudden the lens hood caught my finger, and I knocked it over, and the entire lens is still sitting on my shelf over there inside, broken from last year. And then I went to do it. No, that was 2 years ago. So
you broke the lens doing that?
The lens doing that.
Was this a 51.8 or 51.4?
No, it was an old 28 to 135.
That is old.
The old IS f 3.5 to 4.5.
Yep.
And it's actually a really good quality optic lens. and the IS is really good for video. I own 2 of them. Neither of them work because of the same damn shot.
Talking about UV filters that you just mentioned, I'm a bit different a little bit because Sigma brought out something called the WR coating UV filters. I don't know if you've ever come across them. They're actually made differently. I've seen a video test that Sigma's done where it doesn't shatter. It's designed to take impacts just like the safety glass in your windows, in your cars, as I mentioned in the previous stream. I used to have them on my Sigma 150 to 600s. I know they do it for in a 105mm size as well. They are expensive, do not get me wrong. I think they're about 130 quid for the 105. But from what I've seen, it is worthwhile having on the front of your lens just in case.
I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab mine and see which one it is now. So funny story about my filter. I'm going to get it wrong now. It's either Borrow Lenses or Lens Rentals. I can't remember. I think it was Lens Rentals. They have a keeper program, so you can rent the lens.
Yeah.
And then if you like it, you can pay the used cost and you get refunded whatever 7 days of a rental. So you rent it for $180 or something, and then if you end up buying it, they take $180 off their used price, and then you just pay the difference. So it's as if you had bought it. Like you can go back in time and buy it. And when I bought the 105, I did it in the keeper program, and I couldn't tell if the filter was included or not because it came with the Sigma filter on it. And I was like, I read all their print, and I just sent their Pelican case back and said, I'm keeping it. And then they didn't say where's our filter? So I guess it was included, but I was sweating it. Cause that made the difference between is this a good deal or is this a really good deal with that, $180, 105mm filter on it. Oof. Still got it. I have literally never taken it off. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to check on my boy and grab my lens on. So I'm not going anywhere, but BRB. You might see that I'm wearing pajama pants because I didn't expect to stand up on stream. But I am wearing pants.
All right. Terrell says, what I think it's funny is someone pays $1K or more for a lens and then puts a $15.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that last stream too. Not necessarily, buying expensive lenses and putting cheap filters on them, but some of the cheaper filters, comparing them to the more expensive ones. But at the end of the day, if you need a filter to get a certain shot, like we were talking about, I think we were talking about polarizers. The last stream is what we were specifically talking about.
And NDs.
And NDs. It doesn't have to be expensive for you for it to work and for you to get the shot. That's what matters. Yes, of course, it's a little funny spending $1,000 on a lens to put a $15 filter in front of it. But does that $15 filter give you the shot that you're looking for? That $1,000 lens could maybe. You shouldn't need to spend $1,000 on a lens if you can achieve the same results with a cheaper lens and a $15 filter.
I think what we need to clear up with the thing with UV filters, UV light was something that affected 35mm film.
Right. It was more catered toward film lenses that they didn't have to worry about the exposure changing or the film degrading on old SLR film cameras. And they're not necessarily suited more along the lines of stills lenses of today, because most manufacturers do put some kind of UV coating on the front elements.
Yeah.
Satisfying sound effects provided by Martin.
It is not the WR, but you want to talk about a front element? Here's. Hang on, let me.
Jesus.
And this has the unscrew style this is a carbon fiber lens hood with the twisty, and you can tell that I shoot with it all the time. So I'm always shooting at all kinds of events, and I don't always necessarily know the people that I'm shooting the events for. So I've found that when you're pointing big telephoto lenses at gymnasts a lot, having some stickers on your lens hood calms everybody down a little bit.
Really?
So it's a good way of demonstrating, like, hey, I'm actually supposed to be here. This is my thing, and I'm always happy to have a conversation with it. But people are a little bit aware. This one not as much, but when you've got your 70-200 with your big lens, people will be like, who are you and what are you doing? Who's this bearded guy pointing pictures at our gymnasts?
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. I was at the beach and it was very windy one day. I actually lost my lens hood in the sea.
Ooh.
I won't be that back.
So one of the things I grabbed while I was out for show and tell purposes is I grabbed that Mikey adapter. So I just threw it on the Sigma 105, so you can see the rubber weather sealing on there.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that sticks out like a sore thumb, doesn't it?
Right. And then here's I'm trying to show slop in the lens.
Okay.
It's turning the whole lens. I cannot feel any slop at all. And in my Canon, there's not a lot, but I can feel.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I can feel. I wish it had the cinema clamp style adapter on the Canon. And then the other thing that's great is the drop-in filters. Yeah, that one. So you can compare the. So I've got that one too. But look at the weather sealing gasket. It's there.
Yeah.
I guess.
But it doesn't. I can see it more. I can even see it more prominently on the Mikey one.
Yeah.
Than it's there. Whereas
sure.
on the Canon, and see, that's one of the things that some third-party manufacturers do make superior. Now, I don't want to say superior products to the manufacturer.
They add value.
But they add value because they have to compete with the manufacturer. And yes, at the end of the day, they're still trying to look at overhead and profit margins. But if all you're doing is providing a cheaper product than that has no quality, is that going to be viable for profit? And no, it's not. That's why there's some of these third-party equipment manufacturers that are doing a lot better than some.
Agreed. So I haven't seen any other manufacturer. So this is the same filter form factor as all of the Canon drop-in. Interestingly enough, people who are using EFM, so like your M50s and so forth, Mikey has a EFM to EF adapter with a drop-in filter. They're the only one. Canon doesn't have one. You can use the same drop-in filters on an M50 or an M200 or an M6 Mark II or whatever. Same filters. And Mikey is also the only brand that I've seen that has the black mist. So they've got a 1/4 1/2 or 1/4 and an 1/8 black mist pro. I'm sure they're using a copyrighted term. I think somebody has black pro mist copy, but they still call it that. Nobody else offers those that I've found. And they're great. I mean, they do the exact bloom thing in exactly the way that a $400 pro mist for my Sigma 105 would do for like $55 or something.
Yeah,
that's a big filter. Mine is not the water resistant filter. I just checked, but that's fine. I don't plan on getting my giant lens wet. Was unzipping the case, providing some lens ASMR. If we're gonna have a huge mic here.
So someone's asked another question. Don Massiva. I've got the Canon EOS R, got a 70-200 lens. Got it mainly for taking pictures of my son on the golf course, but also wanted to do some general use portraits. Do I need a 35mm lens?
No, yes. 70-200 is a great photo lens.
Yeah.
Great portrait lens.
Prime. I disagree.
I mean, you can. So,
Yeah.
I are you doing studio portraits or available light portraits? Are you controlling the background or not?
Either way, Primes
For
can do me better.
For
Bring yourself-
portraits, I don't disagree with you that it is better. It's whether or not it matters. Whether it's different enough to make a difference. Here's where I'm coming from. Your portraits are either going to be very shallow depth of field. Pick an eye. Maybe do you want your ears in focus? F2, f2.8, or you're going to be at f8 because you're using studio strobes. And if you're using studio strobes, you're probably controlling the background anyway. So some of the benefits of the f1.2 and the f1.4 primes start to go away. And I did a headshot paid shoot yesterday. I left my primes at home. I brought my 2.8 zooms because I knew I was going to shoot at f5.6. Because I'm doing it for corporate headshots, so that's not exactly a portrait scenario, but and I shot those with a 70-200 at about 130, 120, something like that, just to get the the background separation on the little background that I had set up. And I don't think I would have done anything different with the primes if I'd have brought them. What are the advantages you see to the primes? The things that I've heard are you can get your aperture open wider, and on a test chart they might be sharper, even at the same aperture.
Yes, but then I think that also the question was for that specific for the specific 35.
Okay.
Where as I would agree with that, yes, but don't limit yourself to the 35. I think that the best 3 portrait lenses, yes, I said 3, are the 35, 50, and 85. But the 85 being the number one. So before getting the 35 for portraits, I suggest getting the 85 or a 50 first, because primes will always make you learn more composition and give you more to do. That you would simply just like David said last week, kind of felt like cheating. So that's why I'm a staunch prime shooter. I love primes. I will try to avoid zooms whenever possible, from a simple composition standpoint, separation, and of course we're talking about super fast primes compared to fast zooms, where there are instances that you can definitely, without having to pixel peep, see the difference between 1.2, 1.4, and 2.8. Obviously, there's going to be dead giveaways for somebody who is at least a photocentric eye. But if you're doing them strictly for portraits, it's going to give you like Paul said earlier about the number of elements and moving parts, you could have just one, especially for portraits. People are going to want to nitpick and make sure everything looks, because they're most critical about their faces. And see, there's a great lens to start on, the 50 1.8. And there's it's yes, the sharpness, and not just at wide open. There's hardly any chromatic aberration when you shoot a little bit stop down, because even at portraits, when I do mine, I don't even shoot at 1.2 or 1.4. I'll stop it down just a little bit to, I think the lowest that I've gone was f1.8, and on the 51 1.2, just to make sure that it was not so overblown and had a little bit more corner sharpness. But it just feels, you get more of the feeling in the intent of the eyes when you shoot on primes compared to zooms that I found. It's more of that unseen factor, like the pop factor. Do you see a difference now compared to when I was on the 17-40 earlier? Of course you do, because this 35 pops. I look a lot better on this one than I did on the other one, even though I'm still at 30. I was at 35 on the 17-40.
Do you think so? My thought on primes is there's a lot of ways you can get background separation, right? You can control the background by using an artificial background. You can control the back. You can get background separation with lighting. You can get background separation by just, it's interesting that I'm sitting here on the side of zooms in this conversation. Well, I have the primiest prime you could prime. I think they literally market it as the bokeh master. If I'm taking portraits, and by portraits I mean like 3/4 portraits or headshots, I'm not below I'm not below f4, and if I'm not below f4, because I'm not doing billboards and magazine covers, the quality I get out of my L zooms is fine.
Yeah,
that's good enough for me. And the flexibility in those situations, the flexibility that I get from the zooms is more beneficial than the incremental optical precision from the Sigma Art primes.
Okay.
If I'm using the primes, I'm using them wide open. Any shared apertures, once I start to share apertures with my zooms, I'm grabbing the zooms.
Yeah. And I think the other part of that is what you already said, that if you're doing it one way with natural light, shooting wide open, that's one type of portrait photography. And then on the other side, you're shooting at f8 with studio light,
Yep.
And at that point, which one does come into play more? And absolutely, that's something to consider. Whereas, once you have that prime, and there is no changing that focal length.
Right.
Whereas if you have a zoom, it's variable. But so yes, there is a convenience factor. But if you're specifically doing studio, not necessarily studio, but portraits, no matter where you are, a faster prime is going to give you a little bit more ease of access if you're specifically using it to shoot portraits.
Yep. We've talked prime versus zoom a little bit. In the prime camp, my favorite portrait lens for a long time was the 135 f2.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful sharp lens, and I love the telephoto compression, because that's another way you can get background separation is with telephoto compression, which is a whole nother whatever. It's a great lens. I love telephoto lenses if I'm doing natural light, because usually when you're doing natural light, you've got room, right? You're outside or you're somewhere where you can back up. You're not in a 8x10 bedroom. So for me, I prefer 105. I love the 105. Canon doesn't have a 105, but Canon has a great affordable 135. Before that, if you're shooting, I wouldn't put a 135 on APS-C, but the 85 1.8 is a smoking deal as a sports lens, as a portrait lens. I prefer that lens to the 50 in most cases. The 50 1.8, the 85 1.8 is just that much. You're going to get larger bokeh balls. You're going to get better background separation. You're going to get a more pleasing. It's great on a full frame. It's great on APS-C as well, and it's $300 maybe. I think I sold one for $200 a while ago to somebody on a hookup. I
was just raving about it last stream too.
Yeah, you get a little chromatic aberration in the edges. Yeah, the edges are a little bit soft, but don't put anything interesting in the edges. That's fine. Like put the subject in the middle of your frame, and you'll get amazing pictures.
That is the portrait lens I think everybody should start out on. If you want to learn portrait photography, get the 85 1.8 and a 5D Mark II. Start from there and just take pictures. That's all you got to do. You want to learn? If you want to do sports photography and you have an EPS-C camera, and you're doing an indoor sport. If you're doing an outdoors daytime sport, buy a 55 to 250 STM. Done. Shoot with that. Yeah. If you are doing an indoor sport or a nighttime sport, buy yourself an 85 1.8. It's a fifth of the cost of the 70 to 200, and it actually has some advantages. I upgrade. The only reason I sold mine is because I bought the RF 85 f2, and I bring that with me.
and I selectively choose it over a lens that costs 3 times as much because it's got an extra stop and it's more convenient, and it weighs a quarter of the weight of my 70-200. I still bring my 85 f2 as a backup because I told you I shoot redundant everything. One point of gear failure isn't going to bring down my ability to deliver. I bring the 85 STM as a backup for my 105 f1.4. Now, is it going to deliver the same pictures? It's not going to deliver the same pictures.
No.
Is it going to deliver good pictures? Absolutely, it's going to deliver good pictures. It's going to get the job done if I need to, and it weighs nothing.
So, would you choose the 135 f2 over your 105 Nikon?
105 Sigma, I sold my 135 f2 when I got my R6 because it was not on the list of 12 frames per second mechanical shutter speed compatible lenses. I haven't repurchased it because now that I have the R3, until I get 2 bodies that I can use it on, I can't have a lens that I can only use on one body. So now Canon did me a favor.
I got lenses the shit I don't even own.
Canon did me a favor by not coming out with the originally rumored RF 135 f1.4. The first rumors for that lens
said there was going to be a
1.4.
Yeah.
And I would have had to buy it. I would have had to buy it. I would have sold this laptop and that light and this lens and that camera and one of my kids and bought that lens because I would have used it. The 1.8, I can already buy the Sigma. That lens didn't excite me. But if they had come out with a 1.4, I would have had to buy it. So I'm glad my bank account is thankful that they did not come out with the 1.4.
So the kids don't have to go to community college.
Exactly right. Kids get to go to school. All that did is change. We're talking about primes and zooms. Sorry, we shifted a little bit from the question, but my prime desire now has shifted from the 135 f1.4 that's never going to exist to continuing to monitor the secondary market on 200 1.8s. Because they have gotten real cheap. You can pick up one of those for like under $3,000. For some reason, they all have fungus, but like I'm not even talking about the cheap ones. Like every one of those is like
I'll just send them to you. Leave them outside.
Exactly, UV blast them. But
that's what I have.
Man, I want one of those lenses. 1.8 at 200 is very exciting, and I'm sure they're going to come out with an RF. It's probably going to be the f2. Maybe it'll be the 1.8. I don't know. I've bugged my Canon connections. They won't tell me nothing. I'm sure they'll come out with a 200 millimeter.
I'd like to see a 300 1.8 IS.
Yeah. You thought that was a big element.
They thought that was a big element. Triple that.
I'm not getting a super telephoto unless it has IS. Tops. Unless it has IS and it's.
What do you shoot that you need IS for?
Video.
I don't care about IS.
I do.
But does IS do anything for you for video, or are you shooting on a gimbal anyway? Super telephoto doesn't benefit from the gimbal as much, right?
Yeah. And if I'm doing it, especially on a super, it'll be a little bit for the reach, and partly because of the steadiness anyway, being super telephoto, and I'd rather have her at prime. Like we were talking about, Paul, like the 100, 400 versus all the others, and then I was looking at the 100, 500, and I'm just gonna get the R5 Mark II first. So the only question now is the R5 Mark II or the C700 Mark II, or I'm also debating R5C. I was going to be surprised. It's a weird beast.
It's a weird beast.
I kind of would. Yeah, that sounds like right up my alley.
So R5C is weird. What's weird about the R5C to me, it's great that they did it.
I'd like to see a Mark II that doesn't have the overheating problems.
Does the R5C have overheating problems still, or I thought
not necessarily overheating problems,
funny,
but without the workaround of it and the battery life.
The thing that's interesting about the R5C is it's obvious. It feels like a kludge. I'm not in the market for it because I'm not a video guy, but I've seen a lot of frustration that you can't, because they basically just stuck 2 operating systems in one body. They've got the Cinema,
Yeah.
and then they've got the R5. But
Son
for
of a
whatever, but for whatever reason, they took out. They gutted the movie options out of the R5C from the Digix module. By that I mean you can't just shoot in Digix in the photo mode the way you can on R5 and use the subject tracking from the R5 like eye autofocus. You have to use the Cinema, and the Cinema eye tracking algorithms are not as advanced as the Digix photography ones, and it feels weird that they like actively gutted those. And I mean,
which is sad because my C100 has really good eye tracking.
But the R5's got the different modes for motorsports and helmets and chihuahuas and whatever else.
You know this R5C. I think it's got a fan in it, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. It does, yeah.
So what happens when you drop it in the sink?
Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's got 2 things that are big and different. It's got the fan, and it's got no IBIS.
No.
Because the sensor is soldered to the heatsink for the fan, so it doesn't overheat. So there is no IBIS on it.
When I was at the drag strip the other night, it was already getting so late, and I am so far south in Texas. I am literally as far south as you can go in Texas. It was starting to fog really bad, and my cameras were heating up on the inside. And I started getting condensation on the outsides of my body because and on the C100, I don't know if you can see this right here. There's fins for the exhaust fan. C100s are not waterproof.
Yeah,
and yet it started beating up like this thing was in an 8-hour interrogation. And I was just like, oh, no, don't get water in my camera. Or you could always do the most annoying thing possible. Vlog with a cinema camera.
Well, I left it outside in the rain by accident. And I was fortunate to have my 16-35 weather sealed lens on. So I thought I should be okay. I've done that in the past with a standard kit lens, and I was a bit worried that it was knackered. Fortunately, it was all right, but I wouldn't want to put much trust in the kit lens for outside use.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. On that note, I've dropped my 5D Mark II in the water, picked her right back up for about 4 seconds. It was almost completely submerged. Yeah, absolutely fine.
That's scary.
Completely weather sealed, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have a good lens on it at the time? Weather sealed.
What did I have? I think I had no. I didn't even have a weather sealed lens. I had a 51.4 on it. Yeah, and that lens still works fine.
All right. See. So, is anyone thinking about buying the R5 Mark II then?
Nah. My next 2 camera purchases are going to be cameras that aren't out yet. I don't care about the R1. I will buy an R7 Mark II with a BSI stacked APS-C sensor or whatever the BSI stacked APS-C camera ends up being. And I'll buy, if they come out with any other, if there's a camera that comes out with the stacked sensor that is in the R3 at a cheaper price point, with less of the features, but the sensor is the same and it's stacked sensor, I'll buy one of those and turn in my R6. But the R5 Mark II doesn't. The R5 didn't excite me, and the Mark II doesn't add anything to that equation for me.
The R6 has always disappointed me with its total 20 megapixel sensor. I've always wanted equivalent to what my EOS R was, which was 30. So for me, if they come out with an EOS R Mark II, which gives me similar functionality to the R6, but 30 megapixels, I'd be tempted to trade this in for it.
Would you do it with no IBIS?
No.
I mean, at that point, it's a 5D Mark IV.
But according to all the rumors, it is IBIS built in, from what I see.
Yeah, it's supposed to.
And they're not,
I think 8-stop.
They're not going to put no IBIS in a Mark II. I don't think they would do that.
I don't think so either.
So it's interesting to me. It differentiates you. You know, you hit the exact point I was going to say is if you want a high res R6, you're in luck because they made that available to us from launch. And now the Mark, you know, so okay, so we got 20, we got 24, we got 45.
Yeah, too much. I think that maybe that is.
So you want something more than 24 and less than 45, but there's only how many dollars are between them now? There's only a $1,400 range between the Mark II and the original R5.
It's about £1,500 difference between the R6 and the R5, basically.
So they would have to come out with another camera, thread the needle between, you know, with a 32. I'm not saying they couldn't do it. Yeah. It's like from a portfolio standpoint, it's like it starts to get weird. Medium high resolution is a weird thing to chase.
Yeah,
well, it just seems
and
odd.
that's why even Sony has gone for either low megapixels. Some of the A7S III has 12 megapixels. Yeah, 12. You know, and then
exactly 4K,
super megapixel,
60,
and then you know 61.3. I think you know that's like we're branching into medium format territory. Like, do you really need? No, you don't. You don't need 61 megapixels. You don't need 45 megapixels. No. 12 megapixels will do. 8 megapixels will do. You can actually get 4K out of 12 megapixels. You can still upsample 8 megapixels and get 4K.
For video, you're totally right.
Yes.
For video, I think 12 is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I mean, there will come a time where people want to shoot 8K consistently because they're downsampling to 4K because all the content's consumed at 4K. You know, I shoot at 4K to downsample to 1080p a lot of the time, or I shoot at 4K so that I can have. We talked about Instagram Reels for a second. I shoot at 4K so that and save the footage so that I can cut portrait 1080p for Instagram Reels out of it because I know that
I do that.
Legacy it's gonna pendulum back to proper. You know, we've got our eyes are not like this, right? It's gonna pendulum back to landscape video, and everyone who's shooting portrait video as their source files on stuff they actually care about looking at in 10 years is going to have regret.
I think what was it? Fuji or Panasonic just released. I think it was the X-T5 came out that has a
vertical
3x4 vertical video crop mode that's already set for export. And I think that's going to start. We're going to start seeing that in everything now as well.
I'm sure. I was surprised the M50 Mark II didn't have it.
Right, especially they labeled that as the content creators kit.
I mean that camera is the weird answer. The M50 Mark II is the stump you trivia question. That is one of the few cameras that you can actually log into YouTube and stream directly from the camera up to 100 viewers. Wow. For whatever reason, there was some handshake between YouTube and that one camera that you can stream directly from the camera. I don't know why they did it on that camera and that camera only, but it is a weird one. But it's viewer capped. It puts you in a tier of service to not compete with some licensing agreement that you can stream to. I think it's either 100 or 300 viewers. Weird one.
That would be a great problem to have. Hey guys, sorry, we got to sign off. My camera's going to shut off because there's too many of you watching right now. So I'm going to need some of you to leave. So
Yep.
I didn't see much point in the Mark II, to be honest. It didn't seem much of an upgrade to the Mark I when I looked at it.
It was the same hardware with a firmware update to remove. It was clean HDMI out. That was it.
I was expecting autofocus 4K and that never came.
Well, it was clean HDMI out and stream directly to YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that says to me that that
in the M form factor. Wow, what we've all been waiting for.
Well, the fact that they had to come out with a Mark II to get rid of the clean HDR. Oh, did it nuke the recording limit? It did not. Does it still have a 30-minute limit?
Yeah,
I think so.
They've only removed that from the
You're talking about the M50, not the M6.
M50 Mark II. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it still had the recording limit.
Because that's such a weird one. Like it must be like there must be a diode soldered to the board to get around like licensing agreement. The fact that they are not able to just firmware update all the RF cameras to all the footage you want. Because so far it's now.
Oh, I didn't get the hammer. I was going to bring a hammer to bring out the camera.
Yeah. That's the only one where I will agree that is actually a weird one. Because now the R10, the R7, the R3, the R6 Mark II, and the R5C have no recording limits.
Yep.
The R5 and the R6, the R and the RP all have recording limits.
Yeah.
And I think the 1DX Mark II, the flagship, still has recording limits, I believe.
In DCI 4K. And it has recording limits in DCI 4K. Yes, I understand. Okay. Yeah. I know. And I think that's at 60 frames a second. If you bring it down to 24 or 30, I don't think it still has. We should have brought Dan on because Dan has the 1DX.
And this is 1DX3 I'm talking about here.
No, the 3.
The flagship.
Yes, the flagship.
The flagship. All right, boys. Any final notes?
There's 2 questions left, and I'll wrap it up then.
Yeah.
Mike Koff says, I've got a Canon 500mm f4 Mark I. Was thinking of upgrading to the RF 100 to 500. Is there a big jump in quality? To be honest with you, not really.
Probably a drop in quality.
Yeah.
Equivalent at best. That 100 to 500 is like a 6.3 out at 500 millimeters, right?
That's the end of it. I think it is 6.3 at the long end.
So you're
7.1 actually.
7.1.
Yeah. So you're going 7.1 versus a 4?
F4 for no. Yeah. And it prime versus zoom. If you need some more, grab a teleconverter.
He
doesn't need more. He's got 500.
Yeah.
It's almost 400 kilograms. So 4 kilograms, in weight versus the zoom, which is a lot lighter.
Monopods are great. I've got a gimbal head.
Pre-workout.
No. Interesting thing on that topic. I actually I never shot with monopods, tripods, whatever for doing sports until I started shooting volleyball. And club volleyball, you're right up next to the court. And so I'm shooting through the eyepiece, right? Like I do for everything. And I didn't have enough peripheral vision. I got whacked with a ball. So I'm like, okay, I got to shoot volleyball from the back screen. And now I'm balancing an R3 and Sigma's cube of glass out here. Yeah. And so then I bought myself a carbon fiber monopod head or carbon fiber monopod and the gimbal head with it all perfectly balanced. Not an active video gimbal, but the sports gimbal head. Because with volleyball, you're whipping around to track stuff, and that I think it's a MOOV carbon fiber gimbal head. It's been great.
Okay.
It's totally saved my arms, and now volleyball I shoot with that. Gymnastics I still shoot through the viewfinder, and then with it tucked up to your head, the weight doesn't matter. But man, I needed to go to the gym or buy a monopod.
Well, I think cotton carriers do some things where you can mount them on your chest and bring them up.
Yeah.
Which a lot easier for weight saving.
Right.
And there are third-party manufacturers out there that do similar things as well. Yeah. So the last question is, Canon Rebel T6 looking for best lens for low light. What should you go for?
So they didn't give a zoom range.
Yeah.
So I will put on the Facebook page, I made a lens choosing flowchart for APS-C DSLRs.
Yeah, I've seen it. Very good.
So I'll throw that on the Facebook page. Check it out. For low light, the Sigma, it's hard to say to buy a prime when the Sigma 18 to 35 exists.
Yeah.
It's such a great lens. At 1.8, if you need telephoto, get the 85 or the 50 1.8. The 85 1.8 would be my first stop.
They make a 50 to 1 something 1.82.
They do make a 50 to 100. It's twice as expensive, and I've had 2 copies of it, and I could never get the autofocus to behave the way I wanted to do. The 18 to 35, I've never even plugged into the dock. But the 50 to 100, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's more sensitive. I don't know if I just had bad luck with copies, but I couldn't get sharp images with that thing, so I can't recommend it. Okay. I know people like it, but I've never heard anybody say anything bad about the 18 to 35. I've never had anybody have a bunk copy of that one. So the 18 to 35, I can recommend unqualified. The 50 to 100, I can say should be just as good. My personal experiences with it are I had to return them because I couldn't get them to focus on a 7D Mark II. And what else did I put it on? Like I said, if a 7D Mark II can't focus it, I don't know what DSLR is going to be able to do.
No way.
So those would be my recommendations. Telephoto 85 1.8 or 50 1.8. Less telephoto 18 to 35 1.8.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. If you're gonna do wide open low light, you're gonna want something wide. 24, the 24 1.4, the Mark I version is a really, really good lens. Great in low light, wide enough. Not as much chroma sparing, especially at wide open. And if you're going to be shooting low light, wide open, you're going to get some chroma sparing. And it's going to be good enough to get you around. Other than that, maybe if you're on a new RF, try the new 35 IS 1.8. It's got IS.
So now he was on it. So now he was on a T6.
Oh, so, a T6? Yeah.
So a T6 is that's a $400-$500 camera, maybe when it was new.
Yeah.
And now it's trading $230 used. Yeah. I agree that the 24 1.4 is a killer lens.
Yeah.
But it's $1,100.
$1,000. Yeah, it's $1,000.
It's $1,000 lens on the used market, whereas I'm about to list my 18 to 35. Now that I'm getting out of APS-C, if I get $600 for it, I'm going to be thrilled. Right, like the market on those, you can catch a sale and get them for $699 from Sigma, just about. So $500 or $600, you've got a bag of primes lens. Yeah, the zoom range isn't great, but it's an 18 millimeter, it's a 24 millimeter, it's a 35 millimeter, it's a 28 millimeter, and it is sharp. So
that's a very good point, and that's sad because I own a copy of it too.
Yeah, it's a great lens. It is such a great lens. I bought the 24 to 35 f2 full frame. Also good. Also good. It doesn't have. It isn't quite as good. It's a little bit bigger. The zoom range is a little more restrictive. It's closer to now instead of 3 primes, it's 2 primes. I wasn't thinking about the fact. I knew the zoom range was less, but I wasn't thinking about the fact. So. It's instead of 18 to 35, it's 24 to 35. So I already knew that. But what I wasn't thinking about is that 18 to 35 is multiplied by 1.6 and the 24 to 35 is not. So it's actually less than half of the effective field of view difference. And it just feels like, why am I not just grabbing a prime? I got a 40 millimeter f1.4 that's optically perfect and only slightly tighter. I very, very rarely am grabbing the 24 to 35 instead of the 40. It just doesn't have the same magic as the other Sigma prime, as the Sigma primes do. So I may have to swap it out for a 24 or a 28 prime. But the 18 again, we've circled around the question. You said you have a copy of the 18 to 35?
Yes.
Every filmmaker does. Every single one. If you don't have a Canon body, you probably have an EF mount 18 to 35 1.8 floating around somewhere, because people put it on anything with a super 35 sensor. It's the lens. They rebody that lens. Both the 150 to 100 and the 18 to 35, you can pay $2,000 or something. Yeah, I see that. We're about that wrapping up anyway, but you can buy them in cinema bodies. They made those as cinema grade glass. You can get them rebodied straight from Sigma, and they're amazing. Any other questions, Paul? This has been a good chat.
No, that's it. The only lens I would recommend would be the 17 to 50 2.8 DC APS-C lens. You can stick on APS-C. That's what the T6 is in it.
Yep.
And for a cheap lens, it's you can pick them up for about 200 quid. I would have thought off eBay used.
Yep.
And it does the job, you know.
So the other lens that's in that mix, there's the 17 to 50 Sigma. If you want to spend a little more, get less zoom range and better apertures, there's 18 to 35 Sigma. And then the EFS 17 to 55.
Yeah.
That is an L lens in disguise. It's got amazing ultra low dispersion elements in it. I think it's one of the only non-L lenses to have the ultra low dispersion elements in it and the same coatings. It's got a lot of L lens tech in an 17 to 55 millimeter f2.8 IS package. The problem with recommending it though is that it's not a cheap lens. Even on the used market, they're still trading $500 or more.
Yeah.
So if you can get a good deal on a copy, it's a great lens. It's getting a little bit older. They do have some autofocus issues if they get old enough. I had one copy with bad autofocus. I have one copy that was rock solid until I sold it. But beautiful lens. I think a little bit sharper than the Sigma, but like twice as expensive. And if you're already paying twice as much, you probably want the 18 to 35 anyway. You can always crop in. You can never crop out.
Yeah.
I'm signing off there, fellas. We'll see you.
Same pleasant chat. I'll catch you next time for sure.
I'll talk to you later, Paul. Martin, it was nice chatting with you guys. I'm waving at nobody. So
likewise. I'll wave twice for you.
Yes. All right.
Adios, gents.
All right, it's gone. Right, that's more or less the end of the live stream. Thank you for everyone who attended, who's been watching. I'll just end that with my intro Canon video to the channel. Sorry, my voice has been a bit croaky today, but you know, it's one of those things. And thanks for watching. Thank you. I'm in forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get. I'm in forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get.